"You abandoned my son for the army," Marlene said. She didn't raise her voice. Marlene never raised her voice when she believed she was right. She stood at my kitchen counter in a pink robe I had never seen, pouring coffee into my mug, the blue one Daniel gave me after my first deployment. A strip of white tape had been stuck to the cabinet above her head. "Coffee/tea/filters," it said in Marlene's handwriting. Behind her, another label read, "Breakfast Grains." I had been home less than 12 hours. I didn't abandon Daniel. No? She set the pot down. Then what would you call leaving your husband alone year after year? Daniel appeared in the doorway with one sock on and the other in his hand. He had always possessed an almost supernatural ability to arrive 1 second too late to prevent trouble. "Marlene," he said. Not Mom. Marlene. The name he used when he wanted credit for being firm without actually taking a side. She looked at him, then back at me. "The least you can do is give him his mother back." I stared at her. Give him his mother back? You know what I mean. No, I really don't. Daniel pressed his thumb into the heel of his empty sock. Claire, she's upset. I looked at my husband, who had not come to the airport the night before. He had not come to the airfield when I returned from Kuwait. He had not come to Baltimore when I finished my assignment in Germany. He had missed Fort Bliss, too, though I had mailed him the pass myself. He missed every homecoming, I said. The kitchen went quiet except for the refrigerator kicking on. Marlene's forehead creased. It was not guilt. Not yet. It was the look of someone hearing a sentence in a language she almost understood. Daniel lowered his eyes. That was the moment I knew he had told her a story about our marriage. I just didn't know how long he'd been telling it, or how much of me he had erased to make it work. 36 hours earlier, I was standing at the arrivals curb at Reagan National, trying not to look like a woman who had been forgotten. My flight had landed at 6:42. At 6:44, Daniel texted, "Landed?" I wrote, "Yes, just got through." A little white bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Great. Call when you're close. I read it 3 times. Then I called him. He answered on the 6th ring. There was television noise behind him and the hollow clink of ice in a glass. "Hey," he said, "you okay? I'm at the airport." A pause followed. Not a shocked pause. More like he had opened a drawer and found the wrong utensils. At the airport now? That's generally what landed means. Wait, today's Saturday. I know. I thought it was Sunday. I shifted the duffel on my good shoulder. Pain sparked down the other one anyway, sharp and electrical. The orthopedic specialist had called it a repetitive stress injury, complicated by an old tear. The Army had called it manageable. I called it the reason I no longer slept on my left side. "My itinerary says Saturday," I said. "No, I know, but I thought you said the 23rd. "It is the 23rd. Another pause. On the curb beside me, a man in a University of Maryland sweatshirt saw his wife coming through the sliding doors and lifted both hands like she had scored a winning touchdown. She laughed, dropped her suitcase, and ran into him. I looked away before their happiness could become rude. Daniel sighed into my ear. "Okay, damn. I'm sorry. Let me get dressed." "How long?" "With traffic?" 45 minutes. Maybe an hour. He lived 28 minutes away. I could hear him moving now, opening something, closing something. I pictured our bedroom, my side of the closet probably full of empty hangers, my nightstand with the same paperback I had left 14 months earlier, a grocery receipt marking page 93. Then he said, "Actually, the car's low on gas." I closed my eyes. "Claire? I'll figure it out." "No, don't do that. Do what?" That voice. What voice? The sergeant voice. I looked down at myself. Jeans, boots, black sweatshirt. My uniform was packed in the duffel, but apparently my rank traveled independently. I said, "I'll figure it out. I can come get you. You just explained why you can't." I didn't say I can't. I said it'll take a while. A shuttle bus pulled up, exhaled, and opened its doors. Nobody got off. "I'll call Renee." "Oh, come on. Then she'll make it a whole thing. She owns a car with gas in it." "Claire." I'll see you at home." I ended the call before he could tell me not to hang up. That was one of Daniel's favorite tricks. He could delay an argument for 20 minutes by objecting to how I was leaving it. Renee answered immediately. "Tell me you're calling from Daniel's car." "I'm calling from the airport. There was a beat." Then she said, "Gate or curb?" "Curb. I'm putting on pants. You live 2 hours away. An hour and 20 if everyone else behaves." Renee, did he forget? He confused the date. Those are the same thing with better public relations. I can take a cab. You can, but you called me because you don't want to walk into that house alone. That landed harder than it should have. Behind me, the airport doors opened again. A cluster of travelers spilled out, scanning faces, checking phones, becoming claimed one by one. "I'll buy you breakfast," I said. "It's almost 8 at night. I've been awake for 22 hours. Time has become a suggestion. Stay where there are people. I'll text when I'm close." The call ended. I sat on a concrete bench beneath a banner welcoming home a Navy unit that had arrived the week before. The tape at one corner had come loose, so "Welcome" sagged into "Well-Ome" whenever the wind moved it. Somebody had left 3 wilted balloons tied to a trash can. I tried Daniel again after 20 minutes, not because I needed anything, but because marriage trains you to keep checking the same locked door. He didn't answer. At 9, he texted, "Everything okay?" I wrote, "Renee's coming." His response arrived so fast I knew the phone had been in his hand. I said I could get you. I didn't answer. Renee pulled up at 9:37 in a dented Subaru covered in pollen. She got out wearing gray sweatpants, a denim jacket, and fuzzy red socks shoved into running shoes. Her hair was twisted into a knot that looked structurally unsound. She stopped 3 feet from me. For a second, neither of us moved. Renee had served with me for 6 years. She had once sewn the back of my trousers with dental floss in a supply shed outside Fallujah and never mentioned that my underwear had cartoon peaches on it. She had also threatened to break Daniel's nose after Kuwait, which was why I had not wanted to call her. "You look terrible," she said. "You look like you escaped a house fire. I dressed in 90 seconds. You took an hour and 37 minutes traffic. Also, I got gas. It's a thing people do when they plan to drive." I laughed before I could stop myself. Her face changed. The sarcasm fell away, and she stepped forward carefully, mindful of my shoulder. She hugged me around the ribs. "Welcome home, Mercer," she whispered. I held on too long. When we separated, she took the duffel before I could protest. "You shouldn't lift that," I said. "I manage a physical therapy clinic. I know how backs work. You answer phones at a physical therapy clinic? I absorb knowledge through proximity." On the drive, she did not ask why Daniel had missed the airport. She asked about my flight, my shoulder, and whether the new job had confirmed my start date. I told her I had 2 weeks before I began at a regional medical distributor, managing warehouse operations. She called it Army logistics with fewer explosions and more dental coverage. "Daniel's excited," I said. "Is he?" "He says he is." She kept her eyes on the highway. "That wasn't what I asked." Streetlights slid over her face in steady intervals. I watched the dark glass beside me. My reflection looked older than 38, though exhaustion was doing some of the work. I had spent the last year telling myself that this return was different. I had declined promotion to Sergeant First Class. I had accepted a civilian job 40 minutes from our house. I had turned down a transfer Daniel said he could not survive. I was not going anywhere. That had seemed romantic when I said it to him over video. Now it sounded like a warning. We reached the house just after 11. Every downstairs light was on. Daniel's car sat in the driveway, angled across both spaces as if he had arrived during an emergency. Renee glanced at it. "Low on gas, huh?" "Don't." I didn't say anything. You said it with your whole face. Daniel opened the front door before I reached the porch. He had showered. His hair was damp and he wore the green button-down shirt I liked, the one that made his eyes look almost gold. For one ridiculous second, my body remembered missing him. Then he smiled too brightly. Surprise. I stopped on the step. What's the surprise? He leaned in and kissed me. His lips were cool. I could smell mouthwash. Behind him, the entryway had changed. A wooden rack crowded with women's shoes stood where my cedar trunk used to be. A floral coat hung from the hook that had always held Daniel's rain jacket. On the small table beside the door sat a ceramic dish shaped like a cabbage. "Daniel," I said. He took my hand. "Mom's staying with us for a little while." I looked past him toward the hallway. At the far end, the door to my study was open. A sewing machine stood on my desk under a white plastic cover. Bolts of fabric filled the bookcase. My reading chair was gone. Daniel squeezed my fingers. "She's asleep," he whispered, as if that were the part requiring caution. "How long is a little while?" His smile faltered. Renee set my duffel down behind me with a soft, deliberate thud. Daniel looked from her to me. "Can we not do this on the porch?" I stepped into the house. There, beside my missing cedar trunk, was a cardboard box labeled Claire, Army Things. The flaps had been folded over each other, not taped. I opened them and found my framed promotion certificate on top, wrapped in one of Daniel's old t-shirts. Beneath it were challenge coins, photographs, a folded flag from my retirement ceremony overseas, and the shadow box Renee's unit had given me before I left Romania. My army things, not my things from the study, not Claire's belongings, a category defined by the part of my life that made everybody uncomfortable. "Where's the trunk?" I asked. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Garage." "Why?" "Mom needed somewhere to put her shoes." Renee made a sound behind me that could have been a cough if coughing involved the words, "Jesus Christ." Daniel looked at her. "I know how this looks." "Do you?" she asked. "Renee?" I didn't say her name loudly, but she stopped. She had known me long enough to understand that I wasn't protecting Daniel. I was trying to keep the first 5 minutes inside my house from becoming a trial, where everyone had arrived with a closing argument except me. Daniel picked up the box. "I'll put this back." "Back where?" He hesitated. I looked down the hall. "Why is there a sewing machine in my study? Mom has been doing alterations for people at church. It keeps her busy." "My study keeps her busy? It's temporary. That word is doing a lot of work tonight. Can we please lower our voices?" The stairs creaked. Marlene appeared at the landing in her pink robe, one hand holding the collar closed. Her silver hair was flattened on one side, and she wore the startled expression of someone who had awakened to an intruder before remembering she was not in her own house. Then she saw me. "Oh, my Lord." She hurried down barefoot, smiling so widely that for a second I felt ashamed of every hard thought I'd had since entering. "You're home." She pulled me into her arms. Marlene was 5 inches shorter than I was, but she hugged like she was trying to lift me. Her shoulder pressed directly into the damaged joint, and bright pain shot to my fingertips. I sucked in a breath. She released me at once. "Did I hurt you?" "No, I'm fine." Renee and Daniel both looked at me. "I'm fine," I repeated. Marlene held my face between her hands. Her palms smelled like lavender lotion. "Look at you. You're so thin. I'm exactly 6 pounds heavier than when I left. Well, it's in your boots." She laughed at her own joke, then hugged me again, more carefully. That was Marlene. She could occupy your home without permission and still remember which shoulder hurt. "I made your lemon cake," she said. "The one with the glaze." "You made cake?" "It's in the refrigerator. Daniel told me you'd be here tomorrow or I would have waited to glaze it." Daniel glanced at the floor. Marlene noticed Renee and brightened all over again. "Renee Carter. I haven't seen you in years." "Hello, Mrs. Mercer. You still have that wild hair. I keep waiting for it to develop discipline." Marlene smiled. "Come inside. I'll make coffee." "It's midnight," Daniel said. "Then decaf." "No coffee," I said. "Please." She looked surprised but not offended. "Of course. You must be exhausted." I put fresh sheets on the bed and I washed that gray blanket you like. "Thank you." And I cleared a shelf in the bathroom. "A shelf?" I looked at Daniel. His face said not now. Mine must have said something else, because he stepped between us and lifted the box higher against his chest. I'm going to put this in the garage for tonight. No. He stopped. Leave it in my study. Marlene's smile tightened. There isn't much room in there at the moment. Then leave it beside the desk. Nobody moved. I took the box from Daniel. My shoulder protested, but I carried it down the hall before he could help. The study smelled like steam, fabric, and the cinnamon potpourri Marlene put in every room she considered under her protection. My books had been stacked horizontally along the top shelf. The lower shelves held folded fabric sorted by color. Plastic containers of buttons sat where I used to keep journals. My desk chair had been replaced with a padded stool, and the desk itself was covered with spools of thread, measuring tape, tailor's chalk, and a half-finished navy skirt. Nothing looked careless. That made it worse. Marlene had not dumped my life into a box. She had packed it neatly and built hers in the space. I set the box beneath the window. My chair, I said without turning around. The brown one. Living room, Daniel said. I walked back past him. My chair was not in the living room. In its place, angled toward the television, sat Lloyd Mercer's old recliner. The upholstery was faded green with a dark oval on one arm where Daniel's father's elbow had rested for 20 years. Marlene followed my gaze. Your chair is in the basement, she said. That recliner is better for Daniel's back. Daniel did not have a back problem. I looked at him. He shifted his weight. It's comfortable. Renee touched my elbow. Can I talk to you outside? I let her guide me onto the porch. Cold air slipped under my sweatshirt. Through the front window, I could see Marlene picking an invisible thread off the recliner, while Daniel stood holding nothing, looking relieved to be temporarily unnecessary. Renee folded her arms. Come home with me. No, you don't have to stay here tonight. I live here. I know. That's why I'm trying not to knock him into the azaleas. You'd miss and hit the hydrangeas. I'd adjust. I leaned against the porch railing. It wobbled. I had asked Daniel to repair it before I left, after a delivery driver nearly went through it. Renee followed my eyes and gave the railing an experimental shake. Don't, I said. I'm compiling evidence. This isn't a crime scene, it's got labels. Despite myself, I smiled. Her expression softened. Claire, this isn't about a sewing machine, I know. You declined a promotion for him. I declined it for me, too. Did you? I'm tired, Renee. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have tonight. She studied me for a long moment. Wind lifted loose strands of her hair and whipped them across her mouth. She pulled them away impatiently. You call me, she said. I don't care what time. I will. No, you'll evaluate whether the situation meets some internal threshold for requesting assistance. I'm telling you to call before you conduct a threat assessment. I don't conduct threat assessments in my own house. You inventoried the exits before you hugged me at the airport. There were 2. There were 4. I looked at her. She shrugged. I absorbed knowledge through proximity. I hugged her with my good arm. She held me briefly, then walked to her car without saying anything to Daniel. Before pulling away, she lowered the window. Welcome home, she called. The words carried through the cold, plain, and almost embarrassing. I watched her taillights disappear before going back inside. Marlene had returned upstairs. Daniel was kneeling beside my duffel, unzipping it. What are you doing? Taking your stuff up. I can do it. I know you can. He stood. That doesn't mean you have to. He reached for me, then stopped just short of my shoulder. His hand settled at my waist instead. I screwed up, he said. Which part? The date. That's the part you screwed up? He closed his eyes. Can we start over? Where? I don't know. Maybe with hello. His hand tightened slightly at my waist. There was warmth in it and uncertainty, and the familiar invitation to help him get the moment right. I wanted to lean into him. That was the humiliating part. I had spent months missing the slope between his neck and shoulder, the dry skin at his jaw, the way he slept with one foot outside the blankets, even in winter. Anger did not erase any of it. It just made wanting him feel disloyal to myself. "Hello," I said. He opened his eyes. "Hello." He kissed me gently. I let him. When he tried to deepen the kiss, I stepped back. "I need a shower." "Sure." "And food. There's cake. Food first." He smiled, relieved to have received instructions. "I can make eggs." "I can make eggs." "Claire." "What?" "Let me do something for you." I looked at the women's shoes crowding the entryway, the cabbage dish, the box in my study. "Tell me how long your mother is staying." His relief vanished. We stood in the hallway beneath a framed photograph from our wedding. Daniel's mother had chosen the frame. I remembered that because she had returned the one I bought and said silver looked more permanent. "Her plumbing was a mess," he said. "I know." "You told me about the leak. It wasn't just a leak. They had to open the wall behind the upstairs bathroom, and I said she could stay here for the weekend while they did that. It took longer." "How much longer?" "They found mold." "Marlene's house has mold? It had some moisture." "That's not the same answer." He pushed both hands through his hair. "Why are you interrogating me? I'm asking when your mother is going home. You've been here 15 minutes. 27. He stared at me. "I was outside for 6, I said. This is what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? You come home and immediately everything has to be assessed and corrected." Mom put her shoes in the wrong place. I moved a chair. Suddenly we're all standing for inspection. I glanced toward the stairs. Daniel lowered his voice. "She's been lonely." "I know." "No, you don't. You weren't here after Dad died." The sentence struck exactly where he aimed it. Lloyd had died 11 months earlier, 3 weeks after I left for Romania, a stroke in his cabinet shop. Daniel called me from the hospital parking lot and said his father was gone before I understood he had been sick. I had flown home for the funeral on emergency leave, 4 days. Marlene had barely spoken to me except to ask whether my uniform was required. Daniel spent the first 2 nights at our house and the third on our couch. When I returned overseas, he said grief made him need space. "I came home," I said, "for 4 days. It was all I could get." "I know that." "Do you?" His jaw worked. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Marlene was awake, whether she intended us to know or not. Daniel picked up my duffel. "I'm not doing this tonight." He carried it upstairs. I followed because my clothes were in the bag and because I had nowhere else to go, without making my return feel like a retreat. The bedroom looked mostly the same. My gray blanket was folded at the foot of the bed. The paperback still sat on the nightstand, but the grocery receipt was gone, replaced by one of Marlene's embroidered bookmarks. On my dresser, a vase held 3 yellow roses. Daniel set the bag near the closet. "Mom thought you'd like those." "They're pretty." "She's trying." "At what?" He gave me a tired look and walked into the bathroom. I opened the closet. My uniforms had once occupied the far left side. Now Marlene's winter coats hung there in garment bags, along with 3 formal dresses and a clear plastic container labeled seasonal scarves. My empty hangers had been pushed to the back. Daniel returned holding a towel. He stopped when he saw where I was looking. "There wasn't enough room in the guest closet," he said. "For a weekend?" "Claire, please." I pulled Marlene's coats from the rail, 4 at a time, and laid them across the upholstered bench beneath the window. Daniel watched until I reached for the dresses. "What are you doing?" "Making room for my clothes. She'll think you're throwing her out. I'm moving her coats. She's sensitive right now. So am I." "That's not what I meant." I turned to him. "I know." He looked ashamed for half a second. Then annoyance covered it. "I wanted tonight to be nice." "So did I. I bought wine. I changed the sheets. Your mother changed the sheets. Why does everything have to become a point?" "Because you keep giving me points instead of answers." He dropped the towel onto the bed. "Her house is repaired." There it was. When was it repaired? 2 weeks ago. And she's still here because? She doesn't want to go back yet. I looked at the coats on the bench. 3 garment bags, seasonal scarves, a sewing business in my study, a dead man's recliner in my living room. You told her she could move in. I told her she didn't have to rush. What did you tell me? I was going to explain. You had 11 months. She needed me. The words came out sharp, almost defiant. I stood very still. And what did you need? His face changed. Not enough to give me the answer, but enough to tell me there was one. He looked toward the bedroom door. "Get some sleep," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." Then he left me standing beside the closet and went downstairs to sleep in his father's chair. I stood under the shower until the water turned lukewarm. There was a new grab bar beside the tub and a rubber mat printed with blue seashells. Marlene's shampoo occupied the corner shelf. Her toothbrush stood in the cup beside Daniel's, close enough that the handles touched. Mine was still in my duffel. I washed airport grime out of my hair, bracing one hand against the tile when lifting my left arm became too much. The joint had stiffened during the drive. By morning, I would have to start the exercises the therapist in Romania gave me, assuming Marlene hadn't turned my resistance bands into sewing supplies. When I came out, Daniel was gone. He had left a glass of water and 2 pain relievers on my nightstand. That small kindness hurt more than the argument. I swallowed the pills, put on an old t-shirt, and lay down with my back to his side of the bed. Sleep should have taken me immediately. Instead, every noise in the house arrived separately. Pipes ticking in the wall, the furnace engaging, floorboards settling under unfamiliar weight. At some point, Daniel crossed the hall to use the bathroom. He paused outside the bedroom, but he didn't come in. I finally slept for an hour and woke convinced I had missed formation. My hand shot toward an alarm clock that wasn't there. I sat up too quickly, and pain pulled across my shoulder. The room was gray with early light. The yellow roses on the dresser had begun opening, their petals tight at the center and soft at the edges. I remembered Daniel buying me yellow roses after our 3rd date, because I had mentioned once that red ones felt like an obligation. I wondered if he had told Marlene that story, or if she had simply found the vase under the sink. Downstairs, someone was moving dishes. I dressed in sweatpants and a long-sleeved shirt, then opened my duffel and took out my toiletry bag, laptop, and the small metal tin where I kept loose photographs. Daniel and I had a cloud account full of thousands of images, but the ones that mattered to me lived in that tin, creased at the corners from moving. One showed Renee and me beside a pallet of bottled water in Kuwait, both of us sunburned and squinting. Another showed Daniel asleep on our old couch with my first pair of combat boots beside his head. He had been 26 then, all elbows and optimism. He used to complain when I polished the boots in the living room, then fall asleep waiting for me to finish. I put the tin in the top drawer of my nightstand. My clothes went into the closet. Marlene's coats remained across the bench. I considered carrying them to the guest room, but some stubborn part of me wanted Daniel to do it. I wanted him to feel their weight. He was asleep in Lloyd's recliner when I went downstairs, his head tilted against the faded cushion, mouth slightly open. A blanket covered his legs. Marlene must have put it there. On the coffee table sat the wine he had bought, unopened, beside 2 clean glasses. A gift bag leaned against the bottle. I pulled out a pair of navy wool socks embroidered with tiny silver stars. A tag hung from them in Marlene's handwriting. "For cold feet. Welcome home, sweetheart." I put them back before either of them could see me holding them. Marlene stood in the kitchen measuring coffee into the machine. She had tied her robe at the waist and pinned her hair away from her face. At 6 in the morning, she looked more prepared for the day than I felt. "You're up early," she said. "So are you." "I wake at 5 now. Your father-in-law always did." 43 years of cursing his alarm, and now my eyes open by themselves. She smiled, but it faded before reaching her eyes. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." She took my blue mug from the cabinet without asking which one I wanted. That was when I noticed the labels. Coffee/tea/filters, breakfast grains, medicine/first aid. They were centered with a ruler. Marlene did not believe in casual organization. You labeled the cabinets. Daniel could never find anything. He's lived here 7 years, and still put the colander with the mixing bowls. That's where we kept it. Well, no wonder he couldn't find it. She poured my coffee and handed it to me. She had already added cream. I drank it anyway. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "A little over 6 weeks. 6 weeks turned the room subtly crooked. The leak happened 6 weeks ago? The first leak. Then the contractor opened the wall, and your house has been repaired for 2 weeks." She looked toward the living room, where Daniel was still sleeping. "So he told you, last night. I thought he had explained everything before I came. He told me you were staying for a weekend." Marlene's fingers tightened around the coffee pot handle. "That can't be right. It's what he told me. He said you wanted me here." I set my mug down. "For the weekend? No, until we figured out something permanent." The refrigerator hummed between us. What permanent thing were we figuring out? Her expression shifted from confusion to wariness. "I don't want to be a burden. That's not what I asked. I have my own money. I buy groceries. I've helped Daniel keep the house from falling apart." I glanced toward the loose porch railing visible through the window. Marlene followed my eyes and flushed. "I mean inside. I'm not accusing you of not contributing. It sounds as though you came home and decided, I'm in your way. You're in my study. He said you wouldn't need it anymore. That stopped me. Why wouldn't I need my study? You'll be working during the day. I worked before." Her mouth pressed into a line. "I'm not going to argue over a room at dawn. Neither am I. I'm trying to understand what Daniel told you. He told me the two of you agreed I shouldn't be alone. I agreed you shouldn't be alone while your house was being repaired. You weren't here." The words were quiet, almost apologetic. That made them no less pointed. "No," I said. "I wasn't. You don't know what these months have been like. I know Lloyd died. That isn't the same as being here when he didn't come home." Daniel stirred in the living room. Marlene kept her voice low. Every sound in that house reminded me of him. The garage door, the ice maker, that ridiculous clock he refused to oil. Daniel understood. "I'm glad he was there for you. He needed me too." I thought of Daniel's face when I had asked what he needed. What did he say he needed? She lifted her chin. "A family. I'm his family. You were a voice on a screen." The coffee had begun to burn in my empty stomach. I came home for the funeral. For 4 days. So, I've been reminded. Marlene turned away and opened the cabinet marked breakfast grains. She pulled out oatmeal and placed it on the counter with more force than oatmeal deserved. "You think because you appeared in a uniform, everyone was supposed to feel better. I didn't. He had to watch his father buried and then watch his wife leave again. I had orders. You always had orders." I looked at the side of her face. "What exactly has Daniel told you about why I stayed in—" She gave a humorless laugh. "That you loved it. I did love parts of it. More than being married? No. He said you were offered a chance to come home years ago." I stared at her. "There is no chance to come home. That's not how a contract works. You re-enlisted. Daniel and I decided that together. That is not how he remembers it." Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing one sock. He took in our faces, the oatmeal on the counter, my untouched coffee. "Marlene," he said. She turned toward him. "You told me she wanted me here. I said we'd talk about it. You said Claire felt terrible that I was alone. I did feel terrible," I said. "That doesn't mean I agreed to give up part of my house." Marlene's face hardened. "You abandoned my son for the army." The words were so cleanly delivered that I almost admired them. Daniel tried her first name again, but it had no more effect than the first time. She told me the least I could do was give him his mother back. I asked what that meant. Daniel said she was upset, as if emotion had entered the room independently and selected Marlene as its host. Then I said the thing neither of them expected. He missed every homecoming. The refrigerator kicked on. Daniel lowered his eyes. Marlene looked at him. "What does she mean?" "Not now." "What does she mean, Daniel?" He pulled on his other sock without sitting down. "It's complicated. No, I said. A flight itinerary is complicated. Showing up is not. His head snapped toward me. You told me not to come to Baltimore. I told you not to come after you said driving all that way for a 2-hour ceremony was pointless. You made it sound like you didn't care. What was I supposed to say? Beg? You could have said it mattered. I mailed you a parking pass. Marlene looked between us. You told me spouses weren't allowed at that one. Daniel's face emptied. I hadn't known that lie. Marlene, can you give us a minute? He asked. She took one step back, offended. This concerns me. It really doesn't, I said. Her eyes flashed. You're discussing me being put out of the house. Your house is repaired. This is my son's house too, and I'm his wife. Yes, she said, when it suits you. Daniel stepped forward. Stop, both of you. I looked at him. Don't stand in the middle now. You built the middle. Marlene's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel reached for his keys on the counter. Where are you going? She asked. For a drive. I almost laughed. Of course. He glared at me. I need 10 minutes where nobody is telling me what a terrible person I am. I haven't called you anything. You don't have to. You stand there with that face. This is my face. That's exactly what I mean. He walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the labeled cabinets. Marlene flinched. I didn't, which took more effort than it looked. She turned off the coffee machine, then began wiping a counter that was already clean. He isn't cruel, she said. I didn't say he was. He's been through a great deal. So have I. She folded the dish towel into thirds and hung it over the oven handle. You make everything sound equal. I'm not keeping score. People only say that when they think they're winning. There was enough truth in it to sting. She walked upstairs without making oatmeal. I stood in the kitchen and listened to the bedroom door close over my head. Then I took a roll of painter's tape from the junk drawer, wrote Marlene's coats on it, and stuck it to the garment bags on the bench. It was petty. I knew it was petty. I carried them to the guest room anyway. Marlene sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed now, holding Lloyd's watch in both hands. She looked smaller without the robe, her shoulders narrow beneath a cream sweater. I placed the coats in the closet. I'm not throwing you out today, I said. She kept her eyes on the watch. How generous. You can stay 30 days. That gives you time to get your house ready or decide if you want somewhere smaller. She looked up. And then? Then you leave. Does Daniel know? He will. And if he says no? I thought about the empty airport curb, the unopened wine, and the box labeled with the portion of myself they had decided belonged in storage. Then Daniel and I have a different problem. She studied me with an expression I couldn't read. You really came home expecting everything to wait for you, she said. No. I looked at Lloyd's watch between her hands. I came home expecting my husband to be there. Marlene turned Lloyd's watch over in her palm. The leather band was cracked near the buckle, polished darker where his skin had touched it. He was there, she said. Daniel? For me. After Lloyd. Every day. I know. No, you know he answered the phone. You don't know that he sat on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m. because I couldn't remember where Lloyd kept the shutoff valve. You don't know he took his father's shirts out of the closet because I couldn't touch them. Her voice stayed steady until the last word. I sat in the chair beside the window. A basket of folded fabric occupied the other one. I'm glad you had him. You say that as if he was borrowed equipment. I don't know what response you want from me. I want you to understand that he needed someone too. I've been trying to understand what he needs for 14 years. And you couldn't find it? There were days when Marlene's sharpness felt accidental, the natural edge of a woman who believed every silence needed trimming. This was not one of them. Maybe he didn't tell me, I said. A wife should know. A mother should too, apparently. But here we are. She looked down at the watch again. I immediately wished I could pull the sentence back, not because it was false, but because it had found the softest place in the room and pressed. Marlene set the watch on the nightstand. Lloyd never made me guess whether he was coming home. No. He just worked 12-hour days and expected dinner when he got there. Her eyes lifted. I remembered too late that Daniel had told me that, in confidence years earlier, after too much bourbon at Thanksgiving. Lloyd had been kind to me, but kindness and ease were not the same thing. Marlene had spent decades arranging her life around the cabinet shop's hours and calling it preference. "You think you know my marriage?" she asked. "No. You think a uniform gives you some special understanding of sacrifice?" "No. You certainly have a lot of answers for someone who keeps saying no." A car door closed outside. Marlene stood and smoothed her sweater over her hips. By the time Daniel came through the front door carrying a paper bag, her face had returned to normal. It was one of the more unsettling family talents I had encountered. "I got bagels," he called. Neither of us answered. He found us in the guest room and looked at the coats hanging in the closet. "What happened?" "Claire gave me 30 days, Marlene said. Daniel turned to me. "She what?" She heard me. "You don't get to do that. I just did." "It's my house, too." "Exactly. Which is why you should have discussed moving someone into it. She's my mother." "I'm familiar with the relationship." He dropped the bag onto the bed. One of the paper handles tore. Marlene stepped toward the door. "I'll let you two discuss me." "You don't have to go," Daniel said. She passed him without answering. He waited until her bedroom door, my study door, closed across the hall. She had apparently decided that room offered better privacy than the one where she slept. "You were here one night," he said. "One night, Claire. She's been here 6 weeks because she needed help. She told me I agreed to something permanent. I said we would see how it went. To her. You said that to her. I was going to tell you." "When?" "When you got settled." I looked around at the guest room. The framed photograph over the bed had been replaced with one of Lloyd standing beside a freshly finished cherry cabinet. Marlene's slippers waited beneath the dresser. A row of prescription bottles lined the nightstand beside the watch. "Does this look temporary to you?" She was lonely. I am not arguing that she was lonely. You're treating her like a problem to solve. I gave her 30 days. You gave my grieving mother an eviction date. Her house is repaired, Daniel. That's not the point. What is the point? He stared at me, and for 1 second I saw the answer try to surface. Then he looked toward the closed study door. The point is that you don't get to return after 14 months and start issuing orders. I asked a question last night. You didn't answer it until I found the answer myself. That doesn't turn this into a command post. No, it turns it into a marriage where one person makes decisions and the other learns about them when she walks through the door. You made plenty of decisions. Name one. He laughed without humor. Seriously? Yes. You re-enlisted. We agreed I would. You wanted to. That isn't the same as agreeing. I asked you before I signed. And what was I supposed to say? The truth. You had the paperwork spread across the table. You had the retention officer calling you. Everybody was congratulating you before you even asked me. So you said yes because you didn't want to look unsupportive. I said yes because I loved you. That isn't love. That's consent with a grievance attached. His face tightened. You always do that. Do what? Turn everything into one clean sentence where you win. A sharp mechanical hum started in the study. Marlene had turned on the sewing machine. Daniel glanced at the door, then lowered his voice. She can hear us. She wants to. That's my mother. I'm still familiar. He rubbed his face with both hands. I missed you. The shift was so sudden I nearly lost my footing. He dropped his hands. His eyes were red from sleeping in the chair. I missed you every day, he said. I ate dinner alone. I went to your father-in-law's funeral alone after you left. I signed forms at the hospital alone. Every time something broke, every time somebody asked where you were, every holiday I called. You called when you could. I called whenever I could. Exactly. The sewing machine stopped. He looked at me as if I had interrupted it. I never asked you to pretend it was easy, I said. You didn't ask much of anything. You told me the schedule and expected me to adapt. I thought we were making decisions together. We weren't together. There it was. closer to the truth than anything else he had said. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under me, carrying the faint scent of Marlene's lavender spray. Daniel's anger drained as quickly as it had risen. He leaned against the dresser, looking tired and younger than he was. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want us to see a counselor." He blinked. "A marriage counselor?" "Yes. You've been home 12 hours. And in those 12 hours, I learned your mother lives here. You told her I invited her. And you told her spouses weren't permitted at a homecoming you chose not to attend. I didn't tell her that, exactly. She said you did. I don't remember what I said. That seems convenient." He looked at the floor. Fine, you don't remember? Fine, we'll see someone." I had expected a fight. His quick surrender unsettled me more. "And your mother leaves in 30 days. His head came up. "We discuss that with the counselor." "No. We can discuss how it happened. The deadline stays. You can't make a unilateral decision and complain that I made one. I'm correcting a unilateral decision. You're doing it again." "What?" "Winning with grammar." I almost smiled. Daniel saw it and almost smiled back. For a moment, we were ourselves again, or close enough to make the distance visible. Then Marlene opened the study door. "I have 3 skirts due Monday," she said. "If I'm being removed, I'll need time to notify people." "Nobody said you were being removed today," Daniel told her. "Only in 30 days. She carried the navy skirt into the guest room and laid it on the bed between us. Pins glittered along the hem. "I'll move the machine into this room," she said. "That way Claire can have her office." Her tone suggested she was returning a toy to a difficult child, but the offer surprised me. "Thank you," I said. "I'll need help with the table." "I can help," Daniel said immediately. "I was asking Claire." We both looked at her. Marlene picked up the torn paper bag and peered inside. "You got cinnamon raisin. You like cinnamon raisin. I haven't eaten cinnamon raisin since your father was diagnosed with diabetes. That was Dad's diet. It was easier if we both followed it." She put the bag down. "I'll have plain." Daniel left to toast one for her, looking grateful for a task that could be completed in under 3 minutes. Marlene waited until he was downstairs. "He did want to go to Baltimore," she said. I watched her remove pins from the skirt one at a time. "Did he tell you that?" He was nervous. "About driving? About being there? At my homecoming? You had all those people around you. Renee, your unit. People who knew what you had done and where you had been. He was my husband." Sometimes that made him feel more out of place. I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to say Daniel had made his choice, and discomfort did not excuse absence. Instead, I remembered the first military dinner I took him to. He wore a rented tuxedo and whispered jokes through the speeches. Later, in the hotel elevator, he admitted he had understood none of the acronyms and felt like everyone could tell. I had kissed him and said nobody cared. Maybe that had not comforted him as much as I thought. "He could have told me," I said. "Yes." Marlene's agreement was so immediate that I looked at her. She kept her attention on the skirt. Men don't always say what humiliates them. Women don't get that luxury. "No," she said. "We just call it being tired." Daniel returned with 3 plates. He had toasted the bagels, found cream cheese, and cut mine into careful halves. One half was already spread because he knew I hated tearing hot bread. We ate standing around the guest room, while Marlene complained that he had burned hers. He insisted it was merely dark. She scraped the top with a butter knife, sending black crumbs onto the navy skirt. The ridiculousness of it loosened something. I laughed. Daniel looked at me and smiled. Marlene said, "It isn't that funny," which made me laugh harder. For 5 whole minutes, nobody mentioned the army, the airport, or the deadline. Then my phone rang. The medical distributor's name appeared on the screen. I answered, expecting a routine question about my start date. Instead, the human resources coordinator told me my background check had cleared early and asked if I could come in Monday to meet the warehouse team. "Absolutely," I said. When I ended the call, Daniel was watching me. "Work?" he asked. "They want me Monday. That's good." "It is." Marlene brushed crumbs from the skirt. "I thought you were taking time off." I have 2 weeks. 2 weeks isn't time off after 14 years. I'm not retiring. I'm leaving active duty. Her eyes shifted to Daniel. He had not told her that either. I thought this was temporary, she said. My job? You're being home. Daniel stared at his plate. I felt the room tilt again, slowly this time. What did he tell you? I asked. Marlene looked at her son. Daniel put his untouched bagel down. I said there was always a chance you'd change your mind. Change my mind about what? Daniel kept his eyes on the bagel. Leaving. I already left. You know what I mean? No, I don't. You've said you were done before. I said I was tired before. I said I couldn't keep doing 12-month rotations. I never said I was leaving active duty until now. You talked about it. Talking isn't submitting separation paperwork. Marlene frowned. You submitted paperwork? 8 months ago. She turned to Daniel. You knew for 8 months? He put his plate on the dresser. I knew she was considering it. I wasn't considering it. I did it. The Army changes things all the time. That decision wasn't the Army's. His voice sharpened. You could still re-enlist. I could also join a traveling circus. Neither is likely. This is what I mean. You act like I'm stupid for not understanding a system nobody explains to me. I explained it. I emailed you copies. We spent an hour on the phone going over my transition dates. You spent an hour talking. That's not the same as me understanding. The sentence sat between us, larger than the argument. Marlene began gathering plates. I'm going to make another pot of coffee. She stacked mine on Daniel's and left the room, carrying the navy skirt over one arm. At the door, she paused. You told me she didn't want to come home, she said to him. I said she might not stay. You said she belonged there. Daniel's face reddened. I was trying to prepare you. For what? For Claire being Claire. Marlene looked at me, then back at her son. Whatever she saw made her leave without another word. I waited until she reached the kitchen. What does that mean? Daniel sat in the chair beside the window, elbows on his knees. It means you've always needed something bigger. Bigger than what? This. Me. The house. Dinner at the same time every night. Arguing about whose turn it is to buy toilet paper. I like buying toilet paper. He gave me a tired look. I'm serious. I've spent years using bathrooms where toilet paper required a supply request. Ordinary sounds great. It'll sound great for 6 months. You asked me to come home. I know. I gave up a promotion. I didn't ask you to do that. The room went very still. You said you couldn't do another move. I said I didn't want another move. You said our marriage wouldn't survive another assignment. That isn't asking you to give up your career. What did you think those words meant? I thought we would discuss options. We did. I chose this one. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling. And someday you're going to hate me for it. I had imagined many versions of his gratitude. None were grand. I pictured him helping me hang civilian clothes, teasing me about not knowing what business casual meant, maybe opening the wine he had bought. I had never imagined him refusing ownership of the very choice he had demanded. You decided I'd leave again, I said. I decided not to build my life around a promise I'd heard before, so you built it around your mother. At least she wanted to be here. He regretted it before the final word left his mouth. I nodded once. Claire, I'm going to move the sewing table. I didn't mean that. You did. I meant she's here now. So am I. I crossed the hall and found Marlene wrapping the sewing machine's electrical cord around her hand. The machine was heavier than it looked, solid white metal with a flower decal along one side. I can carry that, I said. So can I. We'll carry it together. I don't need, neither do I. Apparently that's how people in this family ask for help. Her mouth twitched despite herself. We each took one end. When we lifted, my shoulder buckled. I caught the machine before it slipped, but Marlene felt the weight shift. Put it down. I have it. Claire. Something in her tone made me obey. She looked at the way I held my left arm against my side. What happened? Old tear. It got worse. Over there? Mostly. Does Daniel know? Yes. She touched the machine's casing, not looking at me. He said, "You came through everything without a scratch." People like that sentence. "You should have told me." When? Her eyes met mine. There had been no comfortable answer to that question for years. We both knew it. Daniel carried the machine into the guest room alone. Marlene and I followed with fabric, patterns, and plastic containers of buttons. We restored the study without speaking much. She had packed my books carefully, preserving the order except for one shelf. My chair remained in the basement because Daniel said moving Lloyd's recliner would upset her. Marlene heard him and said, "It's a chair, Daniel. Your father is not in it." By noon, my desk was visible again. My cedar trunk came out of the garage with a new scratch across the lid. Daniel offered to sand it. I told him not to touch it until we discussed how. He looked offended, as if caution were punishment. I spent the afternoon calling marriage counselors. 3 were not accepting new clients. 1 returned my call while I was carrying resistance bands upstairs and asked whether we were in immediate danger. I looked down at Daniel sitting at the kitchen table while Marlene sliced lemon cake into pieces exactly the same size. "No," I said. "We're not in danger." The counselor had a cancellation. Thursday at 4. Daniel agreed without checking his calendar. On Monday, I drove to the medical distributor wearing black slacks, a white shirt, and shoes that looked professional but had no business being near a warehouse floor. The operations director, Carla Mendez, noticed them during the tour. "Wear boots when you start," she said. "Steel toe if you own them. I own 7 pairs. Of course you do." Carla was broad-shouldered, direct, and approximately my age. She walked quickly without looking back to see whether I followed. I liked her immediately. The warehouse smelled like cardboard and shrink wrap. Forklifts beeped between high racks of medical supplies. Nobody saluted me. Nobody cared where I had slept 6 months earlier. Carla introduced me as the new distribution manager, and an employee named Vince asked whether I knew the scheduling software. "Not yet," I said. He seemed disappointed by the answer. I was, too. For 14 years, competence had been the ground beneath my feet. Here, I didn't know which bathroom required a code. Carla handed me a visitor badge. "Your background is impressive, but these people don't work for the Army." "I'm aware. You say that now." I looked at her. She smiled. "You're going to tell somebody to do something because it needs doing, and they're going to ask why. Try not to take it personally. What if the answer is obvious? Especially then." The tour lasted 2 hours. When I returned to my car, my shoulder throbbed and my new shoes had carved blisters into both heels. I sat behind the wheel, looking at a loading dock where 2 employees were arguing amiably over a pallet of surgical gloves. I felt useless. I also felt interested. It was the first emotion I had experienced since landing that belonged entirely to me. At home, Marlene had cooked pot roast. Daniel had set the table and lit 2 candles, though it was still light outside. "This is nice," I said. He looked almost shy. "I thought we could have dinner." "We usually do. You know what I mean." Marlene brought in the gravy. He called the cabinet shop. Daniel's smile vanished. "Mom." "What?" "You didn't have to announce it." I sat down. "Which cabinet shop?" "Dad's." Lloyd's business partner, Sam Whitaker, had kept it open after the funeral. Daniel had worked there during college and talked for years about completing a project management certification so he could handle commercial contracts. Each time I asked, something had come up. "I'm meeting Sam tomorrow," he said. "That's good. Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. You made the same face you made when Vince asked whether you knew the software." I stared at him. "How do you know about Vince?" "You told me when you called from the parking lot. I had forgotten the call. He had answered on the first ring, listened while I complained about my shoes, and searched online for steel-toed boots after we hung up. The realization embarrassed me. "I'm glad you called Sam," I said. His shoulders loosened. "Thanks." Marlene carved the pot roast because Daniel cut slices too thick. We ate without fighting. He asked about the warehouse. I asked what Sam had said. Marlene told us the woman whose navy skirt she altered claimed one side was shorter, although Marlene insisted the woman had one hip higher than the other. It felt almost normal. That was the danger of Daniel and me. We could step around a crater and compliment dinner. On Thursday, the counselor's office was in a converted brick house above a dentist. Daniel held the front door for me, then spent the wait filling out his form in tiny, careful handwriting. The counselor was named Helen Park. She wore green glasses and had a ceramic bowl of wrapped mints on the table between us. "What brought you here?" she asked. Daniel looked at me. "Transition stress." I looked at him. "And communication," he added. Helen turned to me. "My husband told his mother I abandoned him for the army," I said. "He also missed every homecoming I had." Daniel shifted in his chair. "That makes it sound intentional, wasn't it? Not the way you mean." Helen did not write anything down. What way does she mean? That I was punishing her? Were you? He looked at the bowl of mints. "Sometimes," he said. The answer knocked the air out of me. Helen waited. Daniel rubbed his palms against his jeans. Sometimes I thought if she came back and nobody was there, she might understand what it felt like when she left. I stared at him. He finally looked at me. "I'm not saying it was right." "No," I said. "You're saying it worked." For once, Daniel did not tell me I was twisting his words. Helen sat back in her chair. "What did you hope Claire would understand? That being left hurts." "I didn't leave you at an airport," I said. "No. You left for a year. I had orders. You volunteered for that assignment. I volunteered for a position before I knew where it would send me. You knew it could send you away, and you knew you were marrying a soldier." Helen raised one hand, not enough to silence us, just enough to make us notice her. "Both of you are arguing facts," she said. "Facts matter, but neither of you is answering the question." Daniel leaned back and folded his arms. I asked, "Which question? What did you want her to feel when she came home and you weren't there?" His eyes moved toward the window. Outside, traffic crept past the brick house. A city bus sighed at the curb and pulled away. "Lonely," he said. The word was barely audible. My shoulder began aching as if it had hurt him. Helen looked at me. "What did you feel?" "Stupid." Daniel turned. "Stupid?" "I stood there defending you to people who didn't ask. Renee would look over my shoulder and I'd say you were parking, or your flight was delayed, or work wouldn't let you leave. You never told me that. I shouldn't have had to. I didn't ask you to lie. No, you just benefited from it." His crossed arms tightened. Helen asked, "Why did you protect him?" "Because they already thought military marriages were doomed. Because everyone notices the spouse who doesn't come. Because I didn't want my unit looking at me like I could coordinate 600 tons of equipment, but couldn't get my husband to answer a text." Daniel's face changed. "So it was about how I made you look." "Partly. At least you admit it. It was also about how you looked. I didn't care what they thought. You cared enough not to go." He looked away. Helen reached for the mint bowl, moved it 2 inches, then put her hands back in her lap. "Daniel, when Claire called after those homecomings, what happened? She acted like it didn't matter. Did you believe her at first, and later?" "I knew." "Knew what? That she was hurt." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "How?" Helen asked. "She gets polite. She says things like, 'No problem.' Then she starts asking if I need anything, because if she's useful, she doesn't have to be upset." I stared at him. He gave a small, miserable shrug. "I do know you, Claire." That was somehow worse. Helen turned to me. "Is he right?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell him you were hurt?" "Because he already knew. Knowing isn't the same as hearing. I wasn't going to beg him to care." Daniel leaned forward. "That's what she does. She turns every need into a test. If I don't figure it out without instructions, I fail." "You had an itinerary." "I'm not talking about the airport. Neither am I." Helen let the silence sit until it became uncomfortable enough that both of us stopped preparing our next answer. "Claire," she said, "does Daniel know how bad your shoulder is?" The question annoyed me instantly. That's not related. It may not be. Does he? He knows I'm injured. Daniel looked at me. "How bad is it?" "It's manageable." Helen's mouth almost smiled. That sounds familiar. I disliked her for several seconds. Daniel's knee began bouncing. "You said it was sore." "It is sore." "You nearly dropped Mom's sewing machine. Marlene told you?" "She didn't have to. I saw your face. So you knew and didn't ask." He stopped bouncing his knee. Helen looked from one of us to the other. "You both seem skilled at observation, less skilled at risking an answer." "I ask questions," I said. "You interrogate," Daniel said. "I ask direct questions." "You ask questions when you already know what you think the answer is, because when I don't, you tell me something temporary. That isn't fair. Your mother has seasonal scarves in my closet." Helen blinked once. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Can we not make my mother the whole problem?" "She isn't the whole problem," I said. "She's just labeled the cabinets where you stored the rest." A laugh escaped Helen before she covered it with a cough. Daniel stared at her. "I'm sorry," she said. That was an evocative image. He looked at me, and despite everything, the corner of his mouth moved. I felt my own mouth answer before I stopped it. Helen saw that too. By the end of the hour, nothing was resolved. Marlene still had 26 days. Daniel still believed the deadline should be discussed, rather than enforced. I still had a husband who admitted he wanted me to hurt. Helen asked us to return the following Thursday. Daniel said yes. In the car, neither of us spoke until we reached the second stoplight. "You made her laugh," he said. "You're upset about that?" "No, you sound upset. I'm not." I turned toward him. Was Germany intentional? He watched the light. "Daniel, not all of them were the same. That isn't an answer. The first one wasn't." "Fort Bliss?" "I was working." "You took the afternoon off." "After." "You told me your manager refused." "My manager changed his mind." "When?" He gripped the steering wheel. "Why does this have to happen right now? Because in there you admitted you punished me, and then we ran out of time." I said sometimes. "Which times?" The light turned green. Someone behind us honked. Daniel drove through the intersection. "Baltimore," he said. "Baltimore was intentional." "Why?" "I don't know." "You told your mother spouses weren't allowed." "I don't remember saying that. She does. She remembers things the way she wants." "So do you." He pulled into an empty pharmacy parking lot and stopped hard enough to lock my seatbelt. "I didn't want to stand there," he said. "Okay? I didn't want to be surrounded by all those people who knew your jokes and your stories and where you'd been. I didn't want to watch you hug Renee first. I wouldn't have. You always did. She was standing next to me." "Exactly." I looked through the windshield at a shopping cart rolling slowly across the lot, pushed by the wind. "You could have been standing next to me," I said. He put the car in park. "I know." We sat there until another vehicle pulled in, and the driver looked at us as if we had chosen a pharmacy parking lot for an unusually bleak date. Daniel drove home. Marlene was waiting at the table with a deck of cards arranged for solitaire. She looked at our faces. "Well?" "It was private," Daniel said. "I wasn't asking for a transcript." "Yes, you were." She gathered the cards into a stack. "Did she tell you to send me home?" "Helen didn't tell us to do anything." "Helen?" "The counselor. You're on a first-name basis already. That's what she introduced herself as." Marlene looked at me. "Did she agree with you?" "It wasn't a debate." "Then what did you pay her for?" Daniel laughed, a single startled bark. "I did too." Marlene seemed irritated by our reaction, but something eased in the room. She dealt herself another game while Daniel made sandwiches. He put mustard on mine, remembered I hated the sweet kind, and scraped it off before handing me the plate. The next morning, he left early to meet Sam at the cabinet shop. He wore khakis and a blue shirt, then changed twice because one shirt looked too much like I'm asking for a loan and the other made him look, according to Marlene, like a divorced golf instructor. When the door closed behind him, she stood at the window until his car disappeared. "I need to go to my house," she said. "I can drive you. I have a license. Your car's blocked in." She looked toward the driveway where Daniel had parked behind her again. Fine. Her house was 15 minutes away in a neighborhood built when kitchens were expected to hide from guests. The lawn had been cut. The repaired wall upstairs was freshly painted, though the new white did not quite match the old white. Marlene walked from room to room, opening windows. "I can still smell it," she said. "I can't. You don't have my nose." The house smelled like furniture polish and closed curtains, not mold. In the bedroom, Lloyd's side of the closet was empty. The hangers remained, evenly spaced. Marlene touched each one as she passed. "The contractor says everything is dry," I said. "He isn't sleeping here." "Who?" "The contractor." Easy for him to say. I nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress barely moved beneath her. "I wake up and reach across," she said. "Every morning, even at Daniel's house. Our house." She gave me a look. "Yes." I opened the curtains. Light revealed dust floating above Lloyd's dresser. "Daniel would stay here if I asked," she said. "I know. He wouldn't give me a deadline." "No." She waited. I turned from the window. "Do you want to live here?" "I don't know. That's different from not being able to." Her mouth tightened. "You think everything is a matter of ability." "No. I think you're allowed to hate it here and still need to decide." She looked around the room at the empty hangers and the watch-shaped pale spot on the nightstand. "Would you help me?" she asked. "With what?" "Spend one night here." "Not tonight. Sometime before the 30 days. It was the first thing she had asked of me that wasn't disguised as an expectation. "Yes," I said. She nodded and stood. When we returned, Daniel was on the porch in his blue shirt, waiting. He looked at his mother, then at me. "You took her there?" Marlene walked past him with her purse. "I asked her," she said. "Try not to make everything about you." Daniel looked wounded for half a second, then covered it with irritation. "I was worried." "I left a note," Marlene said. It said, "Gone to house with Claire." That sounds like the beginning of a hostage situation. You watch too much television. She continued inside. Daniel waited until the door closed before asking, "What happened?" We looked around. "Is she moving back?" "She hasn't decided. You gave her a deadline. That doesn't mean she stopped having decisions." He studied my face as if trying to determine what agreement his mother and I had reached without him. "How did it go with Sam?" I asked. The suspicion disappeared. A smile fought its way through. He offered me the job. I hugged him before I could calculate whether I should. He held me carefully, one arm around my waist and the other high on my back, avoiding my shoulder. His shirt smelled like sawdust, even though he had only been inside the shop for an interview. "What job?" "Project coordinator," officially. Mostly estimates, supplier orders, scheduling installations. He wants somebody who understands how Dad handled the commercial accounts. "You understand that better than anyone. I haven't done it in years. You'll remember." He drew back. "I start Monday." "So do I." "I know." Something passed between us then. Not romance exactly, but recognition. We were both standing at the edge of unfamiliar work, stripped of the excuses we had used to explain why we had not begun. "We should celebrate," I said. Daniel bought steaks. Marlene opened the wine we had ignored on my first night and complained that red wine gave her a headache while accepting a second glass. Daniel grilled on the back patio with a flashlight because the porch bulb had burned out. I held the flashlight and kept accidentally shining it in his eyes. "Interrogation tactics," he said. "If I were interrogating you, the steak wouldn't be involved. That sounds like a waste of a steak. You don't use your best materials in the first hour." He looked at me. "You're joking, mostly." He laughed, and for a few minutes, standing in the cold beside a grill that leaned slightly to the left, I remembered why I had married him. Daniel could be funny without needing an audience. He could make an ordinary inconvenience feel like the two of us had been selected for a private adventure. Later, Marlene went upstairs, and we sat on the living room floor because Lloyd's recliner faced the television and my chair remained in the basement. Daniel rested his back against the couch. "This room looks ridiculous. You said the recliner was comfortable. It is. It's also enormous. Your father liked to sit as if he were commanding a small country. He'd fall asleep before the evening news and wake up during the weather. Then he'd claim he had been listening. He snored through a tornado warning. He said the siren was disruptive." We smiled. The wine made the edges of the house softer. Daniel reached for my hand. His thumb moved over my wedding ring, which had left a pale groove in my skin after years of being removed for work and put back on whenever I could wear it safely. "I really am glad you're home," he said. "Are you?" He let go. "I shouldn't have asked it like that, but you did. I don't know how to believe two things at once." "What two things?" "That you missed me and planned for me to leave." He stared at the dark television. "Planning for the worst isn't wanting it. I know. You plan for bad outcomes all the time. At work. You keep a flashlight in your car door, center console, and trunk. Those have different purposes." He laughed under his breath. "Of course they do." I rested my head against the couch. "I'm trying." "So am I." He leaned over and kissed me. This time, I kissed him back. The kiss was slow at first, almost formal, then familiar enough that my body moved ahead of my caution. His hand slid beneath my shirt. I touched the back of his neck and felt the exact place where his hair curled when it needed cutting. Then he shifted his weight and caught my left arm. Pain flashed through the joint. I pulled away. "Damn it." He sat back immediately. "I'm sorry. It's okay." "No, it isn't." "Let me see." "You can't see anything." "Then tell me what to do." The question came out frustrated, but he stayed still and waited. "Ice," I said. 10 minutes. He brought me an ice pack wrapped in a dish towel. We sat side by side on the floor while it numbed my shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "I did." "You said it was manageable." "It is. Is that Army language for bad?" "It's language for manageable." "That's not an answer." I looked at him. He caught the echo before I said anything and shook his head. "Don't." I smiled. He smiled too, reluctantly. We went upstairs together, but neither of us tried again. He slept beside me for the first time since I returned. At 3 a.m, I woke with his hand resting lightly against my back, as if even asleep he remembered where not to touch. Marlene chose Tuesday for our night at her house. She packed enough for a week, then insisted she had brought only necessities. We carried 2 bags into the kitchen, where a jar of coffee still sat on the counter exactly where she had left it 6 weeks earlier. She threw it away. "I'm not drinking coffee that's been opened beside mold." There wasn't mold in the kitchen. Air travels. We ordered Chinese food and ate from cartons at the small breakfast table. Marlene complained that the lo mein had too much cabbage, then finished it. At 9, the clock in the living room chimed the hour. She went still with her fork halfway to her mouth. "That was Lloyd's clock," she said. I assumed. He wound it every Sunday. He'd forget, and then he'd argue that it was supposed to lose time. The chime faded. "You can stop it," I said. "No." "You can move it." "No." She folded the top of the carton closed. "Why do you always suggest changing things?" "Because you look like the sound hurts. Some things are supposed to hurt." I did not know whether I agreed. I cleared the table instead. She slept in her bedroom. I took the couch with a pillow that smelled faintly of Lloyd's aftershave. Around midnight, floorboards creaked overhead. A minute later, Marlene appeared at the foot of the stairs wearing her robe. "Are you awake?" "No." She sat in Lloyd's chair across from the couch. "I hated you for leaving after the funeral," she said. "I know. You never asked why. I thought it was obvious. It wasn't only that I needed you. I thought if you stayed, Daniel would stay here. He kept going home to that empty house." I pulled the blanket higher over my legs. "He said you could have delayed your return." I requested an extension. Marlene looked at me. It was denied. "He said you didn't ask." "I did. He was certain. He was wrong." The clock ticked in the dark. "Did you show him?" she asked. "The denial?" "Yes." "It was a conversation, Marlene, not a court case," I told him. She rubbed her thumb over the recliner's arm, along the dark place Lloyd's elbow had made. "Daniel used to lie about finishing his homework," she said. "He would put the books in his backpack and tell me they were done. Then he'd be honestly surprised when the teacher called. I never understood how he could believe a thing because he had decided not to look at it. He's not 12. No." She said it with enough weariness that I didn't need to. We listened to the clock until 1. In the morning, she made eggs in Lloyd's cast-iron pan and opened every curtain. Before we left, she moved 3 dresses from our car into her closet. "I'll stay Friday night by myself," she said. "That's good. Don't sound like a physical therapist. I don't know any physical therapists. You know Renee. She answers phones." Marlene almost smiled. "She seems exhausting." "She is." Back at our house, Daniel noticed the missing dresses. "You're pushing her," he said while Marlene was upstairs. "She picked the night." "Because you slept there first. She asked me to." "She would have asked me." "Then why didn't she?" He had no answer. Monday arrived with 2 travel mugs on the counter and Daniel wearing the same blue shirt from his interview. Marlene took a photograph of us by the front door. "Stand closer," she said. "We're going to different workplaces," Daniel told her. "Not war. Just stand closer." He put his arm around me. I could feel him trembling slightly. At the warehouse, I spent the morning learning software from Vince, who said no offense before every correction and looked disappointed when I took none. By lunch, I had entered 2 orders incorrectly and memorized the bathroom code. Daniel texted at 1. "Sam says I'm overthinking the supplier bids." I wrote, "Are you?" "Probably." "Then stop." "Very supportive," he replied. I stared at the phone, uncertain whether he was joking. A second message appeared. That was a joke. I laughed at my desk. When we got home, Daniel had sawdust in his hair. I had a blister and a headache. Marlene served soup, then left us alone to compare failures. Daniel had used an outdated pricing sheet. I had asked Vince why he needed 45 minutes for a task that took 20, and he had answered, "Because I'm not you." "Carla warned you," Daniel said. "She did." "Did you apologize?" I told him his method was acceptable. "That is not an apology. It's close. It's a hostage note written by an apology." He coached me through a more human version. I helped him build a checklist for supplier quotes. It felt good to be useful to each other without rescue attached. At our second counseling session, Helen asked what had improved. "We both started work," Daniel said. "That's not our marriage," I said. "It affects our marriage." "He's right," Helen said. Daniel tried not to look pleased. I told her about Marlene's house. Daniel said I had inserted myself into a relationship between him and his mother. "You asked me to handle her appointments while I was deployed," I said. "That's different." "How?" "You're trying to make her leave." "She is leaving." His mouth tightened. "You sound happy about that. I'm happy she slept in her own house." "She slept there because you made staying here shameful." Helen asked. "Daniel, what would it mean if your mother went home?" He frowned. "It would mean she was ready. And if Claire helped her become ready." He looked at me. "It would mean she did what I couldn't," he said. The room quieted. Helen asked why that felt threatening. Daniel's knees started bouncing again, because everyone always decides Claire is the capable one. "I don't want to be your mother's capable one, but you are. You show up, fix the problem, and suddenly I'm the person who caused it. You did cause this one. There." He pointed at me. "That." What should I say? I don't know. Maybe admit that you weren't there when she needed someone. I have admitted that. To me. Not to her. I looked at him. "What have you admitted to her?" He stopped. Helen asked, "Does your mother know you intentionally missed a homecoming?" "No, she deserves to," I said. "Why? So she'll be disappointed in me? So she'll stop blaming me for your absence?" He looked down at his hands. Helen didn't tell him what to do. Neither did I. When we reached home, Marlene had set 3 places for dinner. She carried a casserole from the oven and asked whether counseling had been useful. Daniel pulled out his chair but did not sit. Before we eat, he said, "There's something I need to tell you." Marlene set the casserole on a folded towel. That sounds ominous. Daniel looked at me once, then focused on his mother. "I didn't go to Claire's ceremony in Baltimore. I know you didn't go. Spouses weren't permitted. They were." Marlene remained standing, one hand resting on the back of her chair. Daniel swallowed. "I told you they weren't because I didn't want to explain why I stayed home." "Why did you stay home?" "I didn't feel comfortable there." "At a military base?" "It wasn't on base." She glanced at me. "The ceremony was at a reserve center near the airport," I said. "Families were invited, but you told him not to come." "No." Daniel pulled out his chair and sat, though nobody else had. "She didn't exactly ask me to. I mailed you a pass, a map, and the hotel reservation. You said it wasn't a big ceremony. It wasn't. I still wanted my husband there. You didn't say that. Because I thought the reservation said it." Marlene lowered herself into her chair. "You told me Claire preferred to be with her unit." Daniel pressed his palms together between his knees. "That's how it felt. That isn't what I asked." He looked up at her. I recognized the expression on his face. It was the same one he wore when I questioned a charge on our credit card or reminded him he had promised to call someone. Not guilt, exactly. Offense that the conversation had become more precise than he wanted. Marlene reached for the serving spoon, then withdrew her hand. "Were there others?" "Mom." "How many?" Daniel looked at me. I had imagined this conversation for years without admitting it. In most versions, I was furious and eloquent. I listed every date in perfect order, and Daniel finally understood the size of the wound because I described it well enough. Sitting beside a casserole that smelled like cream of mushroom soup, I mostly felt tired. "Fort Bliss," I said. "I finished the logistics course on May 18th. I wore the blue dress you gave me for Christmas because uniforms weren't required at the dinner." Marlene remembered the dress. Her eyes moved toward Daniel. "You said your manager denied the afternoon off," I continued. "Later, you told me he changed his mind after the ceremony had already started." "He did. You went to a Nationals game." Daniel's face went blank. Marlene asked, "What?" "I saw the ticket in his jacket 2 weeks later." "You never said anything," Daniel said. "What would you have said?" "That Mark gave me the ticket at work. You had mustard on your cuff." "That doesn't prove." "Stop," Marlene said. He stopped. I folded my napkin into a narrow rectangle. Kuwait was October 3rd. We landed just before sunrise. Renee's girlfriend brought coffee for 6 people because she thought you'd be there. I wore my uniform for 14 more hours because every time I started to change, somebody said your car might be coming through the gate. Daniel stared at the table. "You told me you had food poisoning," I said. Marlene's breathing changed. "What?" I asked. She was looking at her son. "You had dinner at my house the night before." Daniel closed his eyes. "You ate 2 pork chops," she said. "I remember because your father complained you took the last one. I felt sick later. You came back the next morning to help Lloyd move the planer." The clock over the stove ticked. "I didn't know what time she was landing," Daniel said. "You did," I said. "You texted me at 5:14 asking if we were on the ground." Marlene sat back. "You told me the flight had been delayed." I thought it was. "Why?" "I don't remember every message from 8 years ago." "I do," I said. He looked at me then, angry and frightened. "Of course you do." "Yes. You save everything. I didn't save this. I lived it." He pushed his chair away from the table. "This is exactly why I didn't want to do this." "You started the conversation," Marlene said. "I was trying to be honest." "No," she said. "You were trying to confess to the part you thought you could explain." He stared at her. Marlene's cheeks had gone pale. "What about Germany?" Daniel got up. "Sit down," she said. He laughed once, incredulous. I'm 40 years old, then act like it. His face hardened. I had never heard her speak to him that way. Apparently neither had he. He remained standing, hands at his sides. When I came back from Germany, I said, you said driving to Baltimore for a 2-hour ceremony was pointless. You said we could celebrate at home. We did. You ordered pizza and fell asleep. I had work the next morning. You weren't working then. I was interviewing. The interview was 6 days later. He dragged both hands over his face. Fine. I was tired. So was I. Marlene looked at me. And last week? He confused the date. Daniel's hands dropped. I did confuse the date. You texted landed? I said, because I thought you had a connecting flight. I didn't. I know that now. You had my itinerary. I looked at it wrong. 4 times? Not every time was the same. No, I said. The excuses improved. He turned away from me and gripped the kitchen counter. Marlene asked the question softly, did you want to hurt her? Daniel looked down. Sometimes, he said. The word landed differently at the dinner table than it had in Helen's office. There, it had been contained by green glasses, neutral carpeting, and an hour that ended at 5. Here, it entered the walls. Marlene stared at the side of his face. You let me believe she didn't want you. She didn't. I'm sitting right here, I said. He turned. You wanted the army. You wanted the promotions and the people who understood you. You wanted to come home and have me waiting exactly where you left me. I wanted you at the airport. You wanted the picture. What picture? The husband. The sign. Everybody watching you get welcomed home. I wanted you. For what? 20 minutes before you started talking to Renee about something I couldn't understand? You could have asked. I was tired of asking. You never asked. You punished. His voice rose. Because nothing else got through to you. Marlene flinched. Daniel saw it. His anger collapsed inward, leaving him exposed. I didn't know what else to do, he said. You could have told me you were unhappy. I did. You told me you hated moving. You hated the schedules. You hated eating alone. I believed you. I changed everything I could. You kept leaving. I was under contract. You signed the contract. After we discussed it. There you go again. We discussed it, so now I'm responsible. You agreed, because saying no would have made me the man who held back his wife. I stood. And missing every homecoming made you what? His eyes met mine. I regretted the question as soon as I asked it, not because it was unfair, because I knew he would hear it in his mother's silence for the rest of his life. Daniel grabbed his keys from the counter. Don't drive angry, Marlene said. He looked at her as if she had betrayed him by sounding like his mother. I need air. You always need air when the room has answers in it, I said. He walked out. The front door slammed. The casserole remained untouched. Marlene covered it with foil and put it back in the warm oven. Then she took 3 plates from the table, rinsed them, and placed them in the dishwasher. She cleaned when grief left her no other instructions. I gathered the silverware. You don't have to help, she said, I know. She wiped the same spot on the counter 3 times. I misunderstood, she said. I put the forks into the basket. That's not an apology. Her hand stopped. I'm trying. You accused me of abandoning him before I had unpacked. I believed my son. You chose not to ask me. You weren't here to ask. I had a phone. He said you were barely available. He called me at 2 a.m. because he couldn't reset the router. I was available. Marlene folded the dish towel into thirds. I shouldn't have said it, she said. No, I was angry. So was I. I didn't call you a liar. She looked at me. What do you want me to say? The truth. I thought I was saying the truth. That's the problem. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. You think I wanted to believe my son was miserable? I think believing I caused it made his misery easier to explain. She sat at the table. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The clock over the stove sounded louder than Lloyd's clock had in the dark. "He was miserable," she said. "I know. You weren't there when he stopped going to the shop. He would sleep until noon. He let bills sit unopened. I paid the bills. That isn't the same as knowing why they were unopened." I asked him. "What did he say?" "That he was handling it." She looked toward the front door. "He learned that from you," she said. I almost argued. Then I thought of my shoulder, my polite voice, and every photograph in which I had smiled beside somebody else's family. "Maybe," I said. Marlene pressed her palms flat against the table. "I'll move back Friday. You don't have to do it because of tonight. I was going to stay there anyway. One night. I can make it 2. This isn't a competition. Everything is a competition if someone keeps score." She had said that before. This time, I heard the echo. "I'll help you move your things," I said. "I can do it, I know." Her mouth trembled. "Then why offer? Because you shouldn't have to do everything alone." She looked at me for a long time. "That would have been a nice thing to say before you gave me 30 days. You weren't listening before I gave you 30 days. To my surprise, she nodded. Daniel returned after midnight. I was in the study, sitting in my recovered chair with the lights off. Headlights crossed the ceiling, then disappeared. He found me there. "Are you waiting up?" I wasn't sleeping. He leaned against the door frame. "Where's Mom?" "Bed." "Did she say anything?" "She's moving home Friday." His face tightened. "You got what you wanted. She decided after you left, because you turned her against me." I told the truth. "You made a presentation. You started it. I admitted Baltimore. You brought out 8 years of evidence. I described my own life." He stepped into the room. "You enjoyed it." The accusation was so ugly that I could not answer immediately. "You enjoyed watching her realize I lied," he said. "No. You wanted someone to finally tell you that you were right. I wanted your mother to stop calling me the reason you didn't show up. She lost Dad. So did you. And you used that. I did not. You knew she'd take your side once she heard it. She shouldn't have to take a side. That's easy to say when she chose yours." I stood. "I'm sleeping in here." His anger disappeared. "Tonight? For now." "Claire, I need space. We're in counseling." "Yes, we had a good week. We had 4 good dinners. That's not the same thing. You kissed me." "I meant it. Then what is this?" I looked around the study. My books were back on the shelves. The box labeled Claire. Army things sat beneath the window. My cedar trunk had not yet returned to its old place because Marlene's shoe rack remained by the door. This is me not pretending tonight didn't happen because tomorrow might be pleasant. He moved closer. "Are you leaving me?" "I don't know." His face crumpled so quickly that I nearly reached for him. "I came to counseling," he said. "I know, I took the job. I know, I told Mom. Part of it." "What else do you want?" The answer came before I could make it kinder. "I want you to show up when it isn't the first week." He stared at me. Then he nodded once and left the room. I closed the door but did not lock it. A few minutes later, his footsteps stopped outside. His shadow remained beneath the door long enough for me to wonder if he would knock. He didn't. In the morning, a mug of coffee sat outside the study door. No note, no knock. Just the blue mug with the cream already added, cooling on the hardwood. I carried it downstairs. Daniel was gone. Marlene stood at the kitchen counter, wrapping glasses in newspaper. 3 cardboard boxes lined the wall beneath the labeled cabinets. "You don't have to leave today," I said. I said Friday. It's Thursday. I need time to put things away before I sleep there. She rolled another glass into the sports section. "Did Daniel go to work?" "He left at 6. The answer relieved me, which irritated me. Marlene folded the newspaper around a wine glass with sharp, precise movements. "He asked if he could take me to dinner tonight." "That's nice. I told him we'd see. You don't have to punish him on my behalf." She looked over her glasses. "I have my own behalf." I reached for an empty box. "I can pack the kitchen," she said. "I know. You should go to work. I don't start until 8. And what do you plan to do? Walk in with me carrying a toaster?" I thought I'd help with the glasses. You'll wrap them too tightly. I've packed satellite equipment. Did it have stems? I took a sheet of newspaper. Give me one. She watched me wrap a wine glass, cushion the bowl, twist the paper around the stem, and nest it inside the box. That's acceptable, she said. Thank you, for a beginner. We packed in silence until my phone alarm warned me to leave. As I put on my coat, Marlene removed the label from the cabinet above the coffee machine. It came away in one strip. You can leave it, I said. No, Daniel can learn. At work, Vince had changed the sequence of 3 outbound orders without telling me. I found out when a driver arrived for a pallet that was still 20 feet in the air. Why would you change the schedule? I asked. Because Cardwell called and needed theirs first. Then why didn't you tell me? You were in Carla's office. You have my number. You were in the building. That makes not telling me worse. Vince leaned against the warehouse desk. I fixed the problem. You moved it. That's what fixing is here. I could hear my own voice tightening. The driver is waiting. He's 15 minutes early. That isn't relevant. It is to the driver. The driver, who stood close enough to hear us, lifted one hand. I'm enjoying this, but I can come back. Carla appeared beside the loading bay wearing a safety vest and an expression of professional curiosity. Problem? She asked. No, Vince and I said together. She looked at the suspended pallet, the waiting truck, and both of our faces. Excellent, she said. Then I assume someone has a plan. I did have a plan. It involved moving 2 pallets, reopening a manifest, and making a different driver wait. Vince had a plan that involved giving the early driver coffee until the forklift operator finished the order. His plan worked in 11 minutes. Later, I found him in the break room eating crackers over the trash can. You were right, I said. He waited. I should have asked why you changed the sequence before deciding it was wrong. He waited longer. And I'm sorry. Was that physically painful? More than the blisters. He nodded solemnly. Good apology. Don't get used to it. Too late. When I returned to my desk, there was a text from Daniel. Dinner with Mom tonight. Home around 9. I wrote, okay. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. They came back. How's your day? I told him about Vince and the pallet. Daniel replied that maybe civilian logistics required fewer explosions because employees were allowed to argue back. I smiled at the phone. Then I remembered sleeping in the study and felt disloyal for smiling, which was ridiculous. A marriage did not become false because one text was kind. It also did not become repaired. Marlene's boxes had multiplied by the time I got home. Her sewing machine waited beside the front door. Daniel's father's recliner remained in the living room. He says he'll bring that Saturday, she told me. What about the shoe rack? Keep it. I don't want it. Neither do I. We both looked at the wooden rack that had displaced my cedar trunk. Firewood? I suggested. It costs $90. That doesn't make it attractive. She smiled before she could stop herself. Daniel arrived early carrying flowers for his mother and a small paper bag from the bakery. He had changed out of his work shirt but still had sawdust at one temple. For your house, he said, handing Marlene the flowers. They'll be dead before I finish unpacking. Good to see you, too. What's in the bag? Almond cookies. I like pecan. You bought almond every Christmas. For your father. Daniel looked at me. Has she always been this difficult? Yes, I said. Marlene took the cookies from him. I'll freeze them. They left for dinner. I ate the remaining casserole at the kitchen counter, then moved my cedar trunk back into the entryway by myself. The scratch across the lid caught the light. I ran my fingers over it and decided not to sand it. The mark belonged to what had happened, but it did not need to become the only thing I saw. Marlene spent Friday night at her own house. Daniel returned from helping her unload close to midnight. I was reading in the study. She made me leave at 10, he said from the doorway. How was she? Angry that I put the glasses in the wrong cabinet. Sounds stable. She cried when I moved Dad's recliner. I closed the book. It's there? Living room. Same spot. How was that for you? He leaned one shoulder against the frame. You've been talking to Helen too much. That wasn't an interrogation. I know. He looked toward the empty guest room. The closet doors stood open. A rectangle on the wall was brighter where Lloyd's photograph had hung. I don't like her being there alone, he said. She isn't alone. She's by herself. That sounds like something you'd put on a plaque. It can go beside the cabinet labels. He smiled faintly. Do you want to sleep upstairs? He asked. The question was gentle, no pressure hidden inside it. Not yet. His smile disappeared, but he nodded. Okay. He went upstairs alone. By Monday, the house had settled into a strange new geometry. Daniel and I left for work within 20 minutes of each other. We texted during the day. We ate dinner at the same table and slept on different floors. Marlene called him each evening and called me once to ask where I kept the number for the plumber, then remembered the plumber worked near her house and hung up. Daniel missed work Tuesday. I knew because I found him asleep in Lloyd's recliner, which he had returned to our living room after Marlene decided it made her house feel staged. My keys woke him at 6:30. What happened? He blinked at me. What? Why aren't you dressed? He checked his phone and sat up too quickly. Damn it. You have to be there at 7. I know. Call Sam. I know, Claire. He stood, stumbled over the blanket, and went upstairs. 10 minutes later, he returned in yesterday's shirt, pulling on a shoe. Did your alarm not go off? I turned it off. Why? I didn't sleep. Because? He stared at me. I'm asking. Because my wife is sleeping in her office. I set my bag on the floor. That's why you're missing work? I overslept. People oversleep. Call Sam. Stop telling me to call Sam. He hired you because he knew your father. Don't make him regret it. His face hardened. There it is. What? The capable one. This has nothing to do with me. It always has something to do with you. He shoved his foot into the shoe and left without tying it. That evening, he came home with flowers, not yellow roses. Grocery store carnations wrapped in plastic, red and white mixed together. I was an ass, he said. Yes. I called Sam. He said it happens. Once. I know. He put the flowers in a drinking glass because Marlene had taken the vase back to her house. We ordered pizza, and Daniel fell asleep on the couch before the second half of the basketball game. I covered him with the blanket. Thursday, I arrived at Helen's office at 3:55. Daniel texted at 4. Running late. Sam needed estimate revised. At 4:10, Helen asked if I wanted to wait another few minutes. He'll come, I said. At 4:20, I called him. Voicemail. Helen offered to use the remaining time as an individual session. I nearly refused. Sitting alone in that room felt like arriving at another ceremony without my husband. Then I thought of the airport, the airfield, Baltimore, and the blue dress at Fort Bliss. I'll stay, I said. Helen did not ask me what Daniel's absence meant. She asked what I wanted if he never learned to arrive differently. I want my marriage, I said. What does that mean? It means him. That answers who, not what. I looked at the mint bowl. I want somebody who does what he says. Do you? The question irritated me. Yes. Then why have you spent years accepting the opposite? Because he isn't only the things he misses. No one is. He's funny. He notices when I'm cold. He can tell I'm upset before I say anything. And then, sometimes he waits for me to get over it. Helen nodded. I hated the nod. At 4:52, my phone buzzed. Can't make it, sorry, we'll reschedule. I read the message twice. Then I put the phone face down. When I got home, Daniel was in the kitchen eating cereal. Where were you? I asked. He looked up. Work. Until when? 5. Our appointment was 4. I told you Sam needed the estimate. You texted me at 4. I thought I could finish. You could have called Helen. I was working. You missed Tuesday. What does that have to do with this? You missed work because I was sleeping in the study, then missed counseling because you had work. He put down the spoon. So now there's no correct choice. The correct choice was calling before I sat alone for an hour. I apologized. You texted. What do you want, Claire? You moved out of our bedroom. Mom moved home. You made it clear I'm on probation in my own house, And then you expect me to sit in front of Helen while the two of you explain why everything I do is evidence. You agreed to counseling before you decided the verdict. This isn't a trial. You could have fooled me. I looked at the cereal turning soft in his bowl. I need us to separate, I said. He went still. We are separated. No, I'm sleeping behind a door. You stand outside. Claire, I need you to move out. His chair scraped back. This is my house. I know. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. He stared at me, waiting for instructions. For once, I did not give him any. Daniel waited so long that the refrigerator motor shut off. You don't know where I should go, he said. No. Your first instinct isn't even Mom's. She just moved home. She has a guest room. She has a right to decide what happens in it. He laughed, but nothing about it was amused. Now you care about her choices. I cared before. I just didn't let her choices replace mine. He stood and carried his cereal bowl to the sink. Milk splashed against the stainless steel. He left the spoon inside it. So that's it? He asked. I miss one appointment and I'm out? It isn't one appointment. We had a bad week. We had a good week. Then the first difficult thing happened. My mother moved out. You moved out of our room. I started a new job. So did I. Of course you're fine. I'm not fine. You go to work, you manage your people. You come home and sit in your office like none of this touches you. I sat alone in a counselor's office today, and you still did the session. What should I have done? Stood in the parking lot waiting for you. He flinched. I had not meant the airport to enter the room. It entered anyway. Daniel braced both hands on the counter. Is there somebody else? No. Did you meet someone overseas? No. At work? I have been there 2 weeks. That isn't an answer. It's no. He stared into the sink. Then why does it feel so easy for you? I walked around the table until I stood close enough to see the gray beginning at his temples. It isn't easy, I said. I'm just not making pain look like confusion anymore. He looked at me then. His eyes filled, though no tears fell. I love you. I love you too. Then don't do this. I closed my eyes. Love had always sounded like an instruction when Daniel was afraid. I'm doing this because I don't know what loving you is supposed to require anymore. He went upstairs. Drawers opened and closed. Closet hangers scraped along the rail. I remained in the kitchen, resisting the urge to follow, help him pack, suggest what he might need, remind him to take his medication. He came down 20 minutes later carrying the same leather suitcase we had used on our honeymoon. One wheel rattled. You know this thing's broken, he said. I know. He stood beside the cedar trunk, suitcase handle in one hand, car keys in the other. How long? I don't know. You have a timeline for everything. Not this. 30 days worked for Mom. You aren't your mother. No, she got help. The sentence was designed to hurt. His face showed that he knew it. I'll call you, he said. Call her first. He left. His car sat in the driveway for several minutes before backing out. I watched from the study window. The suitcase was visible in the back seat. When the taillights disappeared, the house made no sound at all. I called Renee. She answered, Do I need pants? No. That doesn't sound convincing. I asked Daniel to move out. Silence. Then, carefully, Do you want me to come over? No. Do you want me to say good? No. Do you want me to say I'm sorry? I don't know. Okay, have you eaten? There's cereal. That isn't what I asked. I looked at the bowl Daniel had left in the sink. No. Eat something with a color not found in drywall. She stayed on the phone while I heated soup. We talked about nothing important. Her landlord had painted the laundry room a green that made everyone look ill. Someone at her clinic kept stealing yogurt. A patient had mailed the receptionist a thank you card addressed to the loud woman. When we hung up, I carried the blue mug from that morning into the study. The coffee was cold. I slept in the bedroom but woke twice because Daniel's side of the mattress remained undisturbed. At 4, I put one of his pillows on the floor. It did not help. Marlene called before work. He's here, she said. Okay. He arrived with one pair of work pants and no clean socks. I'm not surprised. I told him he can stay through Sunday. That's between you and him. He thinks you'll change your mind before then. I might. The possibility came out before I could evaluate it. Marlene was quiet. "Do you want me to talk to you?" she asked. "About what?" He asked me to explain that he's under pressure. He can explain that himself. That's what I told him. I sat on the edge of the bed. He wasn't pleased, she said. No. I also told him I'm not carrying messages between married adults. Thank you. Don't thank me. I should have stopped doing it years ago. At the warehouse, I approved the wrong carrier for a refrigerated shipment. Vince caught it before pickup and leaned into my office holding the form. "You trying to freeze $12,000 of bandages? They're insulated wraps. They're not supposed to arrive insulated." I corrected the order. "Thank you," I said. He waited with theatrical anticipation. "And I'm sorry. You're getting good at this." "Leave." Carla appeared behind him. "You look terrible, thank you." That wasn't criticism. It sounded efficient. She stepped into the office after Vince left. "Go home. I made one mistake. You've made 6. That's just the first expensive one." I stared at the order sheet. "You don't win anything by staying until you make 7, she said. "I can finish the route review tomorrow." Being sent home at 2 in the afternoon felt more humiliating than any correction I had received in uniform. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before realizing I had nowhere I wanted to go. I drove to Marlene's. Daniel's car was gone. She opened the door, wearing one of Lloyd's old flannel shirts over leggings. "You look terrible," she said. "I've received that feedback." She let me in. The house had changed. Windows were open. Fresh flowers stood on the dining table. Lloyd's clock was silent. "I thought you didn't want to stop it." "I didn't stop it. I forgot to wind it." "Are you going to?" "I haven't decided." She made tea. We sat at the breakfast table where we had eaten lo mein. "Daniel went to work?" I asked. "Yes. He slept through the alarm yesterday, but Sam called him. He missed again? He was 20 minutes late." I looked into my tea. Marlene said, "He isn't you." "I know. You say that as if it's a defect. I don't. You did with Lloyd. You thought because he worked in the same shop for 32 years, he lacked courage. I never said that. You asked him why he didn't expand. Once. He talked about it for 6 months. I had forgotten." Marlene wrapped both hands around her cup. "You enter a room and see everything that could work better. That sounds useful." It is, until the room begins to feel like a list. I looked around her kitchen. The cabinets were old oak. One hinge hung slightly crooked. I didn't come here to fix anything. "Why did you come?" "I didn't want to go home." She nodded as if that answer required no defense. After a while, she said, "I was wrong." "About what?" "You." I waited. "I was wrong to say you abandoned Daniel. I believed what was convenient because his version let me be angry at someone who wasn't in the room. It let me feel useful to him, and it let me move into your house without asking whether you actually wanted me." Her voice remained steady, but the hand around her cup tightened. "I'm sorry, Claire. The apology left me with nowhere to brace." "Thank you," I said. "That's all?" "I don't know what else to do with it yet. You could accept it." I heard it. She nodded. "Fair." The silence that followed was not comfortable, but it was clean. I went home before Daniel returned from work. His toothbrush was gone. The embroidered bookmark remained in my paperback. Helen called the next day to say Daniel had requested another appointment. "He has to request it from me," I said. "He asked me to confirm I had an opening. I'm confirming." "What time?" "Thursday at 4. He can make that?" "He said he will." Daniel arrived at 3:45. He sat in the waiting room wearing his work clothes, sawdust dusting the knees. When I entered, he stood as if he had been waiting at a gate. "Hi," he said. "Hi." He held out a coffee. "Blue paper cup," Cream added. "I didn't know if you'd come. I said I would. So did I last week." "Yes." He looked down. "I know." Inside, Helen asked what had happened since we last met. We separated. Daniel said. Claire asked you to leave. Yes. How did that feel? Like she came home just to leave me from closer range. I looked at him. Helen asked, Did you tell her that? No. Why not? Because it sounds pathetic. It sounds honest, I said. He rubbed sawdust from his pants. I don't know how to do this without making everything worse. Start with why you missed last week, Helen said. I didn't want to come. The answer surprised me. I did have work, he continued, but I could have left. Sam told me to leave. Why didn't you? Because I knew what we would talk about. Mom leaving, the homecomings, me lying. He turned the wedding ring around his finger. I liked the way people treated me when Claire was gone, he said. Not being alone, being the husband who waited. I said nothing. People brought food. Mom called every day. Relatives told me I was patient. Nobody asked why I wasn't finishing my certification or going back to the shop. If I was unhappy, it was because Claire left. If I was stuck, it was because I couldn't plan around her. Helen asked, Did you believe that? I wanted to. He looked at me, and every time she came home, I had to become responsible for my own life again. There was no triumph in hearing it, only the strange stillness of finally reaching the center of a place I had spent years circling. You needed me gone, I said. No. His voice broke. I needed to be able to blame you. He covered his face. I watched his shoulders shake and wanted to cross the space between us. My body even leaned forward. Then I stopped. Daniel lowered his hands. I am sorry. I know. I'll keep coming here. I'll stay at the shop. I'll do whatever you need. That's the problem. What is? You keep asking me to design the version of you who won't hurt me. His mouth opened, then closed. I don't know how to trust a change I had to order, I said. He looked toward Helen, but she did not rescue either of us. Outside, Daniel walked me to my car. Can I hug you? He asked. I nodded. He held me carefully. No pressure on my shoulder, no attempt to make the embrace say more than it could. When we separated, he kept his hands at his sides. Can I come home? He asked. I looked at the man who had finally arrived early. Not yet, I said. Daniel nodded as if I had given him an assignment he could complete. Okay, he said. He did not ask when yet would end. He stayed with Marlene through Sunday. On Monday, he rented a furnished room above a hardware store 10 minutes from the cabinet shop. The room had a hot plate, a slanted ceiling, and a shower Daniel described as designed for a much narrower species. Marlene helped him move. She did not offer her guest room again. Daniel kept coming to counseling. He arrived early enough to buy coffee, remembered Helen hated when he left the empty cup on her windowsill, and stopped looking at me whenever she asked him a question he did not want to answer. He also kept going to work. Sam enrolled him in an estimating course that met online twice a week. Daniel complained about the instructor's voice, the software, and the fact that the course materials referred to every piece of wood as a product component. He complained while completing every assignment. I learned about the course because he told me, not because I asked. At the warehouse, Vince began announcing schedule changes by leaning into my office and saying, I am about to exercise civilian initiative. I stopped asking why, in a tone that made why sound like an accusation. Sometimes his method was better. Sometimes it involved coffee and hope. We adjusted. Carla made me attend physical therapy after she saw me lifting a box with my right arm while pretending the left one was occupied. You supervise people who can do that, she said. I was standing there. Excellent reason to damage yourself. The therapist gave me new resistance bands and told me pain was information, not a challenge. I disliked her immediately, which suggested she was probably right. The house became quiet in stages. First, Daniel's work shirts disappeared from the closet, then his shaving cream left the bathroom. He took the green button-down shirt but forgot the dress shoes that matched it. I placed them beside the front door and left them there for 4 days before texting him. You forgot these. He replied, I know. I don't need them yet. I stared at the shoes. They had become a test without either of us agreeing to one. I moved them into the hall closet. Marlene invited me to dinner on a Wednesday. Daniel was not there. She served baked chicken and apologized for the potatoes before I tasted them. "They're underdone," she said. "They're fine. They're hard. They have structure. You spend too much time around Renee." The clock in the living room was ticking again. She had wound it. After dinner, she showed me the spare bedroom. Lloyd's photograph still hung above the dresser, but the closet held her sewing supplies instead of garment bags waiting to return to our house. "I'm thinking of turning this into a sewing room," she said. "That makes sense." "You don't think it's too soon?" "For what?" "To change things." I looked at the photograph. Lloyd stood beside the cherry cabinet with one hand on the finished door, smiling as though the wood had said something amusing. "He built cabinets," I said. "I don't think he was against changing a room." Marlene looked at me. That was almost sentimental. "Don't tell anyone." She gave me the sewing machine's empty cardboard box for Daniel. He needed boxes for the rest of his clothes. 3 weeks into the separation, he asked me to dinner. We met at a diner near the hardware store. Daniel was already in a booth when I arrived. He stood, then looked uncertain about whether to hug me. I hugged him. He smelled like sawdust and the soap from our house. Apparently he had taken that too. We ordered burgers. He told me Sam had let him prepare an estimate for a restaurant renovation without checking every line first. "I found 2 mistakes after I sent it," he said. "Expensive? $37. "Did you tell Sam?" He laughed. "You hate when people laugh after you confess. I'm developing resilience." He smiled. I told him Vince had started calling me Staff Sergeant when I became overly specific about break room cleanup. Daniel laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. The evening was easy. That frightened me more than fighting. When the check came, he set a printed page beside my plate. It was confirmation that he had registered for the certification exam. "I'm not showing you for credit," he said quickly. "I thought you'd want to know." "I do. I'm going to finish it this time." "That's good." His hand rested near mine on the table. "Is it?" he asked. "For you, yes." He looked down. "I didn't mean it like that," I said. "You did. I'm trying not to turn every good thing you do into evidence for the marriage. That sounds like you've already decided. I haven't. What are you waiting for?" I looked at the half-empty ketchup bottle between us to see if I miss you or miss taking care of us. He drew his hand back. "I miss you," he said. "I miss you, too." "Then what are we doing?" "I don't know." A waitress passed and refilled both our waters without asking. Daniel folded the exam confirmation and put it back in his pocket. "How long do I have to prove this isn't temporary?" The question stayed with me after dinner. He kissed my cheek in the parking lot and drove away. I sat in my car, looking at the diner's red sign reflected in the windshield. How long did he have to prove it? The answer should have been measurable. 6 months, a year, 10 counseling sessions without a missed appointment, 1 completed certification, a row of boxes checked until trust reappeared. Instead, I imagined myself watching him forever. Each alarm answered would be evidence. Each difficult conversation survived would count. Each late arrival would subtract. I would become the inspector he accused me of being, and Daniel would spend our marriage either passing or resenting the test. The next Saturday, he came to the house to collect his dress shoes and repaired the porch railing. I found him outside with a drill, tightening the bracket that had been loose since before Romania. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I should have done it a year ago." "Yes." He tested the railing. It held. "I thought you'd say, 'Thank you.'" "Thank you." That sounded painful. "I'm developing resilience." He laughed. Inside, he packed the rest of his clothes. We worked from opposite sides of the closet, folding shirts into boxes. He found one of my uniform belts mixed with his ties and handed it to me. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The army?" "Yes. Parts." "Which parts?" Knowing where I stood. He nodded. "I always hated that part. You hated knowing where you stood. I hated feeling like everybody else knew and I didn't." I folded the belt and placed it in my drawer. "I should have learned," he said. I could have explained better. You explained plenty. I didn't want to ask questions that proved I was outside it. You weren't outside. I felt outside. Both things could be true. Helen would have enjoyed that sentence. Daniel sealed the final box. I'm doing the work, Claire, I know. I'm not asking for a medal, I know. But I need to know if you can ever see me differently. I looked at him sitting on the closet floor, tape dispenser in one hand. I do see you differently. He waited. I could not tell him whether that was good. At our next counseling session, Helen asked why I'd been quiet. I think I want a divorce, I said. Daniel's entire body went still. Helen did not move. The office radiator hissed against the wall. You think? Daniel asked. I want a divorce. He stood and walked to the window. Traffic moved below, ordinary and indifferent. You said you hadn't decided. I hadn't. When? Saturday. What happened Saturday? Nothing. He turned. I fixed the railing. I know. I packed my things. We had a good conversation. I know. Then why? Because it was good. His face twisted. That makes no sense. It made me realize I can love who you are becoming and still not want to go back. Go back to what? I'm changing it. I believe you. No, you don't. I do. Then stay. I don't trust myself if I stay. He stared at me. I'll measure you, I said. I'll watch every promise. I'll wait for every alarm. And eventually, you'll hate me for making your life an inspection. I won't. You already did. His eyes filled. So this is you protecting me? He asked. No, it's me finally making a choice because it's mine. He sat down hard. Helen asked whether he wanted to stop the session. Daniel shook his head. If I keep going to counseling, he said, if I finish the certification, you should. If I do everything right, this isn't a reward system. You gave me no time. I gave you 14 years. You weren't here for half of them. The words left him raw and reflexive. He covered his mouth. I'm sorry, he said. I know. For the rest of the session, we discussed practical things because grief often needs nouns. The house, the accounts, the furniture. We agreed to speak with a mediator rather than hire lawyers to send angry letters neither of us wanted. In the parking lot, Daniel did not ask to hug me. Does Mom know? He asked. No. I'll tell her. Okay. He called her that night. Marlene arrived at my house an hour later carrying the lemon cake plate I had forgotten to return. Her face was blotched from crying. He asked me to talk sense into you, she said. I took the plate. What did you say? I said I wouldn't. She entered without waiting, then caught herself just inside the door. May I come in? Yes. We sat at the kitchen table. I don't want you to divorce, she said. I know. I still won't tell you not to. Thank you. Don't keep thanking me for things I should have done from the beginning. She looked toward the cabinet where her labels had been. A faint rectangle of adhesive remained above the coffee machine. He says you're giving up just when he's trying. I'm not giving up. That is what divorce is, Claire. I flinched. Marlene saw it but did not retreat. You can make the right decision and still be ending something, she said. Don't make it cleaner than it is. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are. You always do. The truth of it annoyed me. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. He loves you, she said. I know. So do I. I looked at her. She squeezed my fingers once, almost sternly, then let go. The mediator helped us divide a life without pretending it divided evenly. Daniel took the grill, the bedroom set, and half the kitchen. I kept the cedar trunk, my recovered reading chair, and the blue mug. Marlene reclaimed Lloyd's recliner, then changed her mind and donated it to the church thrift shop because, in her words, 3 houses have suffered enough. Neither Daniel nor I could afford the mortgage alone without turning every month into a threat, so we listed the house. The first offer fell through. The second couple complained about the basement carpet. The third stood on the repaired porch and said they liked how solid the railing felt. We accepted. On our last afternoon packing together, Daniel found the old grocery receipt that had once marked page 93 of my paperback. It had slipped beneath the nightstand. He held it up. "You kept this?" I thought it was gone. The receipt showed coffee, mouthwash, yellow roses, and a package of blue pens. Ordinary purchases from a Saturday when we had still believed ordinary would happen automatically. Daniel placed it inside the book. "Your bookmark," he said. Boxes surrounded us. His were marked Daniel Apartment. Mine said Claire. Storage or Claire New House. Marlene had supplied the black marker, but at my request had not written a single label herself. Daniel taped the last box shut. For once, neither of us pretended the packing was temporary. Daniel pressed his palm against the last box, testing the tape. "I wish I had done this differently," he said. "Which part?" He gave me a weary half-smile. "Still direct. I'm working on the tone." The tone was fine. He looked around the bedroom. Without furniture, the room seemed smaller and less certain. Dust outlined the places our nightstands had stood. 4 pale squares marked the wall where photographs had hung. The wedding picture remained in the hallway. "Do you want that?" he asked. "I don't know. We could take it out of the frame." The silver frame Marlene had chosen because it looked permanent. Daniel lifted it from the wall. In the photograph, we were laughing at something outside the camera. I had forgotten what. His tie was crooked. One hand rested at my waist as if we had all the time in the world. "You keep it," I said. "Why me?" "Because you asked first. That isn't a reason. It's the one I have." He turned the frame face down and placed it in his open box. "Do you think we would still be married if I had come to the airport?" he asked. I sat on the floor beside the taped boxes. "Yes." The answer surprised him. "So that was it?" "No. We would still be married because I would have made it mean everything was fixed. I would have unpacked, moved your mother's coats, gone to work, and kept trying." He sat across from me, knees bent. "Would that have been better?" "For a while." He nodded. Downstairs, the front door opened and Renee called, "If anyone is naked, I'm charging extra." "Nobody's naked," I called, disappointing. She appeared in the doorway carrying a bundle of flattened boxes we no longer needed. "I brought structural support," she said. "We're done packing. I can see that now." Daniel stood. "The truck's outside." Renee looked between us, checking the weather in the room. "I can come back." "No," I said. "Help him with the boxes." "Why him?" "My shoulder." "Good answer." She took one end of the box containing Daniel's books. He took the other. For once, neither argued about who could lift more. I carried smaller things downstairs. The house emptied in categories. Kitchen items went into Daniel's truck or mine. The grill went with him. The cedar trunk stayed beside me. Renee found the cabbage-shaped dish inside a cabinet and held it up. "Please tell me this is evidence. It's Marlene's." I knew it had a dark history. Daniel took it from her. She gave it to us. "She moved out," I said. "It goes to her." "Should we ask?" "No," Renee and I said together. We placed it in a box marked Marlene, undecided. By sunset, only cleaning supplies remained. Daniel and I stood in the kitchen while Renee made a final sweep upstairs. The adhesive rectangle above the coffee machine was still visible. Daniel wet a cloth and rubbed at it. "You don't have to do that," I said. "The buyers shouldn't inherit our labels. They'll make their own." He scrubbed until the faint outline disappeared. "I told Mom I used her," he said. "What did she say?" "She said she knew." That sounds like her. She also said knowing later doesn't make you wise. That definitely sounds like her. He rinsed the cloth. "I didn't think of it that way at the time," he said. "The stories I told her. I know. I didn't sit down and invent a whole version of you. I know. I'd say one thing. You didn't want me at a ceremony. You might stay in. You chose the army." Then she filled in the rest because it made sense to her, and you didn't correct her. "No." He folded the wet cloth, then unfolded it. "I liked that she was angry at you. It meant she wasn't looking at me. The confession no longer felt like a weapon. It was simply true. I'm sorry," he said. "I believe you." His eyes moved to mine. "Does that mean you forgive me?" Some days. It was not the answer he wanted, but he accepted it. Renee came downstairs carrying my missing resistance band. Found this hooked around a pipe in the basement. I knew it was down there, Daniel said. You used it to tie up an extension cord, I said. It worked. Renee handed it to me. Your marriage has been holding up the electrical system. Daniel laughed. So did I. The three of us stood in the empty kitchen, laughing longer than the joke deserved, because there was nothing else left to pack. Daniel locked the front door. We each returned a key at closing the next morning. The marriage lasted 6 weeks longer on paper than the house did. Forms traveled back and forth. Dates were checked. The mediator called twice because Daniel and I had both forgotten to initial the same page. When the final notice arrived, I read it at my desk in the warehouse. Vince leaned into the doorway. You look like somebody canceled a shipment. My divorce is final. His mouth opened, then closed. You don't have to say anything, I told him. I was going to ask if you wanted coffee. That's something. He returned with coffee and a package of crackers from the vending machine. He left both on my desk without asking questions. I worked until 5. In the parking lot, I sat behind the wheel and stared at Daniel's name in my phone. It was still listed as husband. I changed it to Daniel. Nothing happened. No music, no shift in the light. I cried anyway. He called that evening. Did you get it? He asked. Yes. Are you okay? No. Me neither. We stayed on the phone without trying to make either person feel better. Before hanging up, he said, I passed the certification exam. You did? This morning. A laugh broke through my tears. Congratulations, thanks. You worked hard, I did. For a second, we were back at the diner with his confirmation page folded beside the ketchup bottle. Then he said, I wanted you to know. I'm glad you told me. He did not ask whether passing changed anything. After the house sold, I rented a small apartment near the warehouse while I looked for somewhere permanent. Most of my furniture stayed in storage. The cedar trunk served as a coffee table. My reading chair sat beside the only window, and my blue mug lived in a cabinet containing 4 plates, 3 bowls, and enough coffee for a platoon. I slept badly at first. The apartment building made unfamiliar noises. A neighbor ran a blender every morning at 5:45. The elevator groaned between floors. I woke at doors closing, pipes knocking, footsteps in the hall. No one was missing from the other side of the bed. That took longer to understand than it should have. Daniel remained at the cabinet shop. Sam gave him responsibility for 2 commercial accounts. Once, he texted me because a supplier delayed an order and he wanted to know how I would handle it. I started typing a 6-point response. Then I erased it. Ask Sam, I wrote, or decide. 10 minutes later, Daniel replied, decided. It worked. He did not tell me what he decided. Marlene sold her house in the spring. She said it was too large, though the house had not grown. She rented a 2-bedroom apartment near her church, with enough space for a sewing room and no staircase to remind her that Lloyd was not coming down. Daniel offered to manage the move. Marlene told him he could carry boxes on Saturday but would not choose where anything went. She asked me to help with the sewing room. The request arrived in a text containing 3 possible dates and the sentence, "No pressure if this is inappropriate." I went. Her new apartment smelled like fresh paint and the cinnamon potpourri she had rescued from our study. The sewing machine sat on a table beneath a wide window. Lloyd's clock rested on a shelf, unwound. You forgot it again, I said. No, I like it quiet here. She had kept the wedding photograph. It stood on the bookshelf in its silver frame beside a picture of Lloyd and Daniel at the cabinet shop. She saw me looking at it. I can put it away when you visit. Don't. It doesn't upset you? Yes. Her eyebrows lifted. Something can upset me and stay true, I said. She nodded slowly. You've been talking to Helen, not for months. Then perhaps some of it stuck. We hung shelves above the sewing table. Marlene did not criticize when the second one sat 1/8 of an inch lower than the first. I mentioned it. I'm trying to become less controlling, she said. You measured my first shelf 4 times. Less is not none. She handed me a container of buttons. Daniel comes for dinner on Sundays, she said. Not every Sunday. That's good. He canceled last week. I looked at her. He called beforehand, she added. Also good. He said he was tired. People are allowed to be tired, apparently. She placed a framed photograph of Lloyd on the lower shelf. I no longer cook enough for 6 people in case someone appears, she said. That sounds wasteful. It was. Daniel took leftovers home for years. We smiled. There were subjects we still approached carefully. The divorce, the funeral, the fact that she had lived in my house believing I was temporary. Care did not erase any of it. Neither did apology. But she stopped treating discomfort as proof that something should not be said. So did I. At work, my shoulder improved enough that the therapist reduced our sessions to twice a month. I learned the scheduling software. Vince learned that asking me to be flexible without details produced the opposite result. Carla promoted nobody, praised nobody dramatically, and trusted me with the next quarter's distribution plan. It was exactly the kind of ordinary competence I wanted. The bungalow appeared in an online listing late one night. 2 bedrooms, narrow porch, small kitchen with cream cabinets and no labels. The backyard was mostly weeds, and the hallway floor sloped slightly toward the bathroom. The second bedroom faced east. I stood in it during the showing and imagined a desk beneath the window, my books on shelves, the cedar trunk somewhere nobody would move it without asking. The payment would be tight but manageable with my share of the house sale. I inspected the porch railing twice. The realtor waited. Is it solid? She asked. Yes. Then why do you keep shaking it? History. I made the offer. At closing, I signed my name enough times that my hand cramped. The realtor gave me 2 keys on a brass ring and a gift basket containing sparkling cider, crackers, and a roll of paper towels. I drove to the bungalow alone. For several minutes, I remained in the car with the keys in my palm. There was no banner on the porch. No one stood at the door. Nobody knew the exact moment I was supposed to arrive. I walked up the steps and let myself in. The empty room smelled like dust and old paint. Afternoon light fell through the front window onto the bare floor. I set the blue mug on the kitchen counter, though I had brought nothing to put in it. This is mine, I said aloud. The words echoed. Then someone knocked. Renee stood on the porch wearing red fuzzy socks inside work boots and holding 2 coffees. Your front door was open, she said. I just got here. I know. I followed you from closing. That's unsettling. You're welcome. She handed me a coffee and looked around. Small, she said. Efficient. Crooked. Character. Yours? I held up the keys. Renee smiled. Good. The movers arrived an hour later. They handled the heavy furniture while Renee and I directed traffic. My reading chair went beside the front window. The cedar trunk went against the entryway wall where it did not interfere with anyone's shoes. The second bedroom became my study before it became anything else. Renee opened boxes while I arranged books. She found the tin of photographs and held up the one of us beside the pallet in Kuwait. Peach underwear day, she said. That information was classified. You wore a white t-shirt in a sandstorm. Nothing was classified. We put the photograph on my desk. By evening, the rooms looked disordered but occupied. Towels had been found. The bed had a blanket. The kitchen contained paper plates, coffee, and 1 saucepan Renee claimed could perform at least 4 known functions. A car pulled up outside. Marlene came up the walkway carrying a covered casserole with both hands. She wore a navy cardigan and sensible shoes. Her silver hair moved in the wind. She reached the bottom of the porch steps and stopped. Renee looked through the window. Is that dinner? Yes. Invite dinner inside. I went to the door. Marlene stayed where she was. I brought chicken and rice, she said. The sauce is separate so it won't get soggy. Thank you, and lemon cake. Renee heard you. Mrs. Mercer, I've always respected you. Renee called from the study. Marlene smiled, then looked at me. May I come in? The question held more than the porch between us. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. Yes, I said. Come in, Marlene.